And welcome to the broadcast. On this Tuesday night, January 6, 2026, we have some very important guests to get to. But first, we have very sad news here. My friend Michael Reagan passed away on the 4th, and we all found out this afternoon. Michael was a very close and lengthy and long personal friend. And I have told him to his face and on this broadcast, you guys have heard me say it to him, that I likely would not be where I am today if he had not been so kind and generous to me. In 1993, when my second book came out, my first book on education, Cradle to College and Educational Abduction, I mailed it to him. I had a big thick book of all the talk show hosts in America that I had purchased. And I sent a copy to so many talk show hosts. And then I would follow up and call their producers. I talked to his producer. I still remember his name because we became friends, Paul Wilkinson. And Paul booked me to be on the show. And I think it was February, March of 1993. And I was so excited to be on the Michael Reagan show because I had such admiration for his father, of course. And I'd gone to his father's first inauguration when we were living in the D.C. area when I was growing up. And that night, Michael had me on. He had me on for probably about 45 minutes. And I was outside of Boston, Massachusetts, where I'd been speaking at an event, education event for a group of Christian schools. And his producer came on the line at the end and said, well, he must have really liked you as a guest. And I said, really? Why? He said, because you were only supposed to be on like 10, 15 minutes. He said, I think you'll be coming back on as a guest. And I said, well, that's great. I'd love to be a regular guest. And sure enough, they kept calling me for interviews. And pretty soon, Michael said, I know you're going on the Oliver North show, and he and Oliver North, very close friends. I know you are going on the Oliver North show, G. Gordon Liddy, a lot of these other shows. And then you're on my show a lot. But you're breaking some news stories here related to education. What if you were my education reporter and you could break them here and then go off to hit them? I said, great. I'd love to be the Michael Reagan education reporter. And so I got a title and I became his education reporter. And I would bring him the stories first. And we broke so many stories together. I've talked about some of them here, whether it's the 59 little 11-year-old girls, 59 little 11-year-old girls given forced genital exams at school in East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, without their parents' permission or knowledge. We broke that on his network, his show. It got picked up, of course, by outlets after that, writing about it. He wrote about it in one of his books. Pretty soon he said, hey, would you like to sit in and be my guest host for me one night? I'd never hosted a radio broadcast. I'd been a guest on so many by then, but I had never hosted a broadcast of my own. And I said, yes, thank you. What an honor. I went to Chicago to go to an affiliate in downtown Chicago. I did this a few times. And there's one of the pictures of me hosting the show. I think I was 26 years old. There he is at our event, our Worldview Weekend in 2007. There I am hosting the Michael Reagan show. I don't know if you guys can see those that's three binders. That show is 3 hours long, and you'll notice there's a binder, 3 binders, 2 black to my right and 1 that's open. I had a binder, a notebook, 3-ring binder for every hour. Every hour I had a binder, 3 hours. I'd never hosted a show. I was scared to death I was going to run out of stuff to talk about in that 3 hours. So I thought, well, I'll have topics for hour 1, hour 2, and hour 3. So I had these binders. Well, anyone that does talk radio figures out real quick that the time goes fast. But you don't want to be where you run out of content. And we were mixing in callers. And there I am, 26 years old, hosting the Michael Reagan show. I couldn't have been more excited and humbled that he would trust me to host his show, a syndicated national show. He sent me a letter, hangs on my wall outside my office. Michael Reagan show. The letter from Michael thanking me for sitting in. Thanking me, I should be thanking him, and I did over and over. And you heard me do it on this broadcast when I would interview him, because it was from hosting the Reagan show that Vic Eliason called me of VCY America. He heard me on the Reagan show and thought, who is this young man? He's clearly a Christian. He called a broadcaster friend of mine in Kansas City, Dick Bott, someone that Michael got to know as well. And he said, do you know this young man, Brandon House? And he said, yes, I just had breakfast with he and his wife. He said, I'd love to call him. Do you have his number? Mr. Bott gave Mr. Eliason my number. Mr. Eliason called me, invited me to be on his show, Crosstalk, VCY America Radio Network. And for there, I began sitting in as a guest host of Crosstalk, being a regular guest, but also sitting in as a guest host of Crosstalk. And then pretty soon they offered me my own program. And I'm on that show, that network, I should say, with my show every day, 1 to 2 Central on those 74 stations. Michael Reagan opened that door for me. Michael Reagan was the first one to entrust me to host his broadcast, to use his platform, his microphone. And he let me do that several times. And he was always so gracious to write a foreword. He wrote the foreword to my next book on education, Reclaiming a Nation at Risk. He wrote the foreword to my book, One Nation Under Man. There he is in my office here in Tennessee. Some of these he's in our home having dinner with my kids. My kids, some of them, Logan, show the ones where you guys are so little. And Michael was so attentive to my children and kind. There's Melissa and Logan and Libby. And little, do we know there's Landon and Libby and Logan. And little did we know years later that Logan, the littlest one there on Michael's lap, would end up producing Michael, being the board operator and engineer and producing Michael so many times. Logan is now 22, be 23 this year, this spring, this April. What else do we got there, Logan? I'm doing better than I thought I was going to do. I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it through this. There he is at our table with Libby, having dinner. There he is signing a book at our Worldview Weekend in Branson in 2007. I'm going to play a clip for you here in a minute. He passed away on the 4th. I don't know the details. I know that he posted on social media, I think on January 2nd. He would text me every week. There's a picture that, by the way, that's framed in my office. That's a picture of his father, obviously, signed by President Reagan, that Michael got me as a gift. Michael was a very generous man, very generous. And he got me that. He personally made the phone call to get me that. That is not an auto pen. Okay, that was a real signature. In fact, he even set it up for me to be able to go and meet President Reagan at his Los Angeles, I think it was on Wilshire Boulevard, to go and meet President Reagan when he was out of office at the top of his building there in Los Angeles. He set that up. He said, I'll set that up. You can go. You just tell me when and I'll set it up. A friend of mine went before me and told me how great it was. But I don't like elevators. I don't like riding elevators. And I just wasn't interested in going up to the skyscraper. But he was willing to set that up for me. But he did get me that autographed picture. And it hangs in my office proudly. You can actually see it, Logan. If you go back to that last picture, you can actually see it behind Michael hanging on the wall there. That right above, that's it right there. That's the picture that Michael got from me of his father. I had the honor to be his literary agent on his book, Twice Adopted, which was the story of him being adopted by Jane Wyman, his mother, and his father, Michael, being adopted by Jane Wyman and Ronald Reagan when he was, I think, 2 or 3 days old. 3 days old. There he is with his dad. And his book was called Twice Adopted. And he asked me if he told me about the book, and he'd had several books that he had published. And he said, I want this to be a distinctively Christian book, Brandon. I want this to be a distinctively Christian book. I already know what I want to call it, Twice Adopted. I said, why Twice Adopted, Michael? I knew why, but I wanted to hear him say it. Because I was adopted by Ronald Reagan and Jane Wyman when I was 3 days old, and then I was adopted by Christ when I became a believer. You know what a small world is? I love that photograph, him boarding Marine One. We actually have the video footage. Played the video footage of that not too long ago, Logan, from the Reagan Library. There's actually video footage of him boarding Marine One on the White House lawn with the president, his dad. It's a small world. Went from Washington, D.C. to Minneapolis, St. Paul. There's this book I was honored to be his literary agent for. And went from Washington, D.C. to Minneapolis, St. Paul, because my dad was with the government, Jackson, Mississippi, to Washington, D.C., to Minneapolis, St. Paul. And I came down back here to the South where I'm from 21 years ago this March. And when I was in the Twin Cities, our family attended a church, Grace Church, Roseville, and had been planted by Grace Church, Edina. The pastor of Grace Church, Edina, used to come over to Grace Church, Roseville, I think about once a month, and preach on a Sunday night at Grace Church, Roseville. And the pastor of Grace Church, Roseville, would go to Grace Church, Edina. These were sister churches. The Edina Church had planted the Roseville Church. And so I grew up at about sixth grade, starting to hear this guy preach regularly, Bob Ricker. Bob Ricker. Maybe look him up, Logan. I wonder if Bob is still alive. Bob Ricker. I talked to Bob probably 15 years ago on the phone. And so Bob would preach. And Pastor Bob Ricker went on to move to California. And he was a pastor. And his wife, Michael Reagan's wife, Colleen, introduced Pastor Bob Ricker and Michael. And it was in Pastor Bob Ricker's office one day, and Michael has told the story publicly, that Colleen and Michael were talking with Pastor Bob about their faith, about the church and joining the church. And it was in that office that Pastor Bob Ricker, and he told me about this in the conversation we were having 15 years ago, probably, Bob Ricker. And Michael and I have talked about it. And it was in that conversation and through that relationship that Michael came to understand the gospel and salvation through Christ alone and became a believer. Accepted the Lord as his Savior. And that's why Michael said, I want to call the book Twice Adopted. Adopted by my mom, Jane Wyman, my dad, Ronald Reagan, when I was 3 days old, and then adopted the second time into the family of Christ. That's why I wanted to call the book Twice Adopted. And he said, I want it to be a distinctively Christian book. Do you think you know of a Christian publisher? I said, I think I do. And I called up a friend of mine at Broadman and Holman and told him about this project. And we worked out the deal. I still have the contract that I negotiated in my file. I've saved it. I saw it a few weeks ago because I was so honored to represent and do something for Michael because of so much that he had done and did for years for me. That was after Michael had spoken at a pro-life banquet in Missouri. Michael spoke at so many pro-life banquets. He spoke at one here several years ago, a pro-life banquet, and that's the pictures of him sitting at our kitchen table having dinner with Melissa and I and the kids, and in my office. That was because he was that one right there. He was speaking the next night at a pro-life banquet, and again, I had the honor to pick him up from the airport, to host him, to drive him around, to be his chauffeur, to sit and wait for him. We went to the pro-life headquarters here in Memphis of this group, and we just had a great time just hanging out, having him in our home. He was last on my broadcast November, 5th of 2025, Logan? November 5th, 2025. He texts me every week, his column, every week. The last text I received from him was December 24th. He texts me his column every week. Every week he would text me his column. He called me on August 17th. It was a Sunday night. It was a Sunday night, August 17th. And he called just to shoot the breeze. And we talked for 58 minutes. How do I know that? Because I took a screenshot of the call. I don't know why. I don't know why, but I took a screenshot of the call because I wanted to remember that call because it was 58 minutes of no agenda. We were just telling stories to each other. He was talking to me about his grandkids. He talked so much about his grandkids, and I can understand that now, having my first granddaughter. I, of course, obviously had sent him pictures of my granddaughter Cayman, and we had talked about being a grandparent. He talked about his kids. He talked about Ashley, his daughter Ashley. He talked about his son Cameron. And of course, we talked about our kids over the years as fathers and what our kids were going through and their ups and their downs and their growing up and just all that kids go through. And we would just talk as dads about kids. And then we talk about grandkids. Of course, he had them long before I did. But he just loved to talk about his kids. He loved to talk about his grandkids. He bragged. He bragged on his children's spouses, Cameron's spouse, Ashley's spouse. He bragged on them, told me what they did. He was so proud of them and what they were doing as parents, spouses. My wife said to me tonight, I know you're sad about this because you lose a friend of 33 years? She said, but the great thing is Michael seemed to be very, very happy where he was in life. Because she would hear these conversations and she was often on speakerphone. I was on speakerphone and she would hear them and he would say something and I would say, yeah, Melissa, something. And he would talk to Melissa through the speakerphone. They would talk. She knew and she heard he was so happy with how his kids were in life and his grandkids. And Colleen, he always spoke so highly of his wife. And they traveled the world together. Maybe a lot of people probably don't know that, how much they traveled the world. He always made fun of me because he said, your world is so small. You don't ever want to leave the studio. You know, how many countries have you been to? I'm like, Canada. That's it. He just thought that was really horrific. He thought I needed to travel. I'm like, I don't want to travel. He loved to travel. And they traveled. And Colleen would lead tours, and he would go on those with him. And he was so involved with the ranch, Young America's Foundation, and the Reagan Ranch. And, of course, the Reagan movie and Dennis Quaid. And then, of course, his column every week. He retired from radio, but he loved doing his column and putting out that column and being a guest on my broadcast, another broadcast, contributor at Newsmax. So I'm doing better than I thought. I did not know if I could make it through this without having to catch my composure. He was 80 years old and surrounded by family, from what I'm told. But I want to honor Michael tonight because look at that picture, 26 years old. I owe him so much, from letting me sit in as his guest host, being his education reporter, writing the foreword to many of my books. He would have me write articles for his national newsletter. He had me on his show so much. I got so many bookings to go out and speak and travel and speak because people would hear me and then book me to come in and speak. He did so much to help me get to where I am today. Even, as I said, the radio network I'm on every day came because Mr. Eliason heard me on the Michael Reagan show. So tonight I wanted to take time just to honor my friend, Michael Reagan, and his great accomplishments. Michael was a very accomplished person. I know that when we think about people that have famous parents, his mother, a very famous actress, his father, obviously governor of California, president of the United States twice. And that can be that's a big shadow. Those are big shadows. Those are big figures. Michael was a very accomplished talk show host who honed his craft and his skill to become syndicated. He was hosting a show, I think it was in San Diego, driving from LA to San Diego. Hated doing it, I think, from what he told me, the drive, but he just did it. He just did it. He finally honed his skill and trade and got syndicated. Very popular program. Very popular program. his commitment to being pro-life, his traveling and speaking for the pro-life organizations of America, promotion of adoption, fighting the sanctity of life, trying to train young people through his own work, his own foundation that he ran, training young people to understand the worldviews like communism, to understand the value of liberty and freedom, to instill into them the desire to apply the constitutional republic values in their everyday life, to save the republic, to maintain the republic, to build back up the republic. His trips overseas with them, show them places like where the Berlin Wall once stood that his father helped to bring down. He did a lot to try to disciple young people. And I don't think a lot of folks know that, unless you really followed him closely or listened when he was on my broadcast. But he did his best to pour his life into other people. He raised funds and money to help young people. He worked to help the young sailors on the Ronald Reagan, the aircraft carrier Ronald Reagan. He worked to help them. He did an awful lot to help other people, to advance other people. And isn't that what I know personally? He helped to advance me. He was always trying to help advance other people. I guess now in hindsight, if I were to have him come back on my broadcast, I would want to ask him, why is it that you seem to be so committed to helping advance other people? I'd like to hear what his answer would be. But I think I know. I think he knew that if we weren't busy training and discipling and mentoring young people, then this generation we're in now could be the last generation to know liberty and freedom. Isn't that what his father said, that liberty and freedom is just one generation away from being lost? Michael Reagan, 80 years old, passed away January 4th, 2026. At the end of tonight's broadcast, I want to play for you his keynote presentation, and I think it was at my 2007 Worldview Weekend. One of the guys in the control room saw the crowd. He's like, wow, that's a really big crowd. That used to be the regular size of our audience at our Worldview Weekends, but a lot of those folks sitting in that auditorium back in 2007, a lot of them are not alive anymore because a lot of our audience, an older audience, has passed away, or they're not even in health to be able to attend those things. And then yet there's also, it seems to be a decreasing interest in the Christian worldview. But you'll notice how big the crowd was. And that was a regular thing for us at our Ozarks Worldview Weekend in Branson. And I want to play his full presentation. I'm going to pull it out of the vault tonight and play right after our broadcast tonight, the full keynote presentation of Michael Reagan. I want to play just an excerpt for you of that. And I hope you'll tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, True Social, tell all your friends. Be sure to go to Brandon House's program at worldviewtube.com. At the end of it, he's going to show and play a special presentation by Michael Reagan. I want you to see just a clip of it right now. Watch this.
My dad was a great letter writer. I wonder about the future because everybody now just emails. But he wrote me a letter when I got married to Colleen. And the letter goes like this. Dear Mike, you've heard all the jokes that have been rousted around by all the unhappy marrieds and cynics. Now, in case no one has suggested it, there is another viewpoint. You have entered into the most meaningful relationship there is in all human life. It could be whatever you decide to make it. Some men only feel their masculinity can only be proven if they play out in their own life all the locker room stories, smugly confident that what a wife doesn't know won't hurt her. The truth is, somehow way down inside, without her ever finding lipstick on the collar or catching a man the flimsy excuse of where he was till 3 a.m., a wife does know. And with that knowing, some of the magic of this relationship disappears. There are more men griping about marriage who kick the whole thing away themselves than there can ever be wives deserving of the blame. There's an old law of physics that You can only get out of the thing as much as you put into it. The man who puts into the marriage only half of what he owns will get that out. Sure, there will be moments when you will see someone or think back on an earlier time, and you will be challenged to see if you can still make the grade. But let me tell you how really great is the challenge of providing, or should I say, proving your masculinity and charm with one woman for the rest of your life. Any man can find a twerp here and there who will go along with cheating, and it doesn't take all that much manhood. It does take quite a man to remain attractive and to be loved by a woman who has heard him snore, seen him unshaven, tended him while he was sick, and washed his dirty underwear. Do that and keep her still feeling a warm glow, and you will know some beautiful music. If you truly love a girl, you should never want her to feel when she sees you greet a secretary or a girl you both know, that humiliation of wondering if she was someone who caused you to be late coming home. Nor should you want any other woman to be able to meet your wife and know she was smiling behind her eyes as she looked at her, the woman you love, remembering this was the woman you rejected even momentarily for her favors. Mike, you know better than many what an unhappy home is and what it can do to others. Now you have a chance to make it come out the way it should. There is no greater happiness for a man than approaching the door at the end of the day knowing someone on the other side of that door is waiting for the sound of his footsteps. Love, Dad, P.S. You'll never get in trouble if you say I love you at least once a day. Thank you.
Presentation tonight, right after Brandon House Live. Michael Reagan. We'll be right back after this break.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
Introducing the Sentry Wellness System, the ultimate under-sink water treatment solution designed with you in mind. Say goodbye to harmful toxins and hello to water enriched with essential nutrients like calcium and magnesium. Enjoy the benefits of increased pH for on-demand alkalinity. All from a zero-waste system that fits seamlessly into your home. Installation is a breeze, taking just 15 minutes, so you can have clean, healthy, great-tasting water straight from your tap. Perfect for apartments, homes, rentals, and even RVs. Elevate your hydration and well-being with the Sentry Wellness System because you deserve the best in every drop.
Sentry H2O. Tap into wellness.
Joining me now is attorney Tom Renz and a man who has spent 20-plus years fighting voter fraud. That would be Garland Favorito, the name I love to say, Garland Favorito, and Tom Renz. Gentlemen, welcome to the broadcast. Thank you for being with us.
Hey, honored to be here.
And I got the chance to introduce you guys for the first time, so I'm shocked you guys didn't know each other. I know you know of each other, but I was shocked you guys didn't know each other. So right before we went on here, we had the chance to get you guys introduced. So thank you for that. All right, now let's talk about, well, here's an article today, January 6, 2026, at Revolver. Here's the damning email that confirms the CIA overthrew the U.S. government in 2020. Now, folks, many of you will remember that in the summer of 2020, I was warning, along with others, about a color revolution. That were we going to see some folks pull shenanigans and steal the election? And some of you will also remember that in the fall, here it is. Here's a screenshot from our archive. That would be September 14th, 2020. There it is. Is America facing a color revolution? And you'll notice that was part one. And obviously then on the next day, September 15th, 2020, part 2. So many of us were not shocked by what we saw on that election night, November 2020, because we had been talking about it leading up to that point. And some white papers and things that have been put out saying, you know, if the election isn't clear, this is what you can expect Trump to do. This is what you can expect Biden's team to do. And they were running these basic tabletop exercises. And we were going through that document and warning about what was likely coming. The CIA having practiced color revolutions overseas and then bringing it home. Garland, you and I went on to do a lot of radio and TV together. We met you, of course, when you came into the studio here to produce Absolute Proof with Mike Lindell. And we've been working together ever since. But you've been doing this 20 years plus. We're going to go back to the article by Revolver. Here's the damning email that confirms the CIA overthrew the U.S. government in 2020. I want you to speak to this because lots of information has been coming out the last few weeks. Also, apparently, we have a general that was in Venezuela who's now, I guess, in U.S. custody that's written a big document on voter fraud through Venezuela and other countries. Bring our audience up to speed. If no one had ever heard any of this till tonight, can you give them the 40,000-foot view of what we're talking about?
Oh, wow, that's so tough, Brandon. But it's really what it really is election fraud. And the allegations are the connections between, started with Chavez all the way back in 2005 and the rigged election there. And I think you're going to show clips tonight with Lou Dobbs and Sidney Powell both talking about this. Lou Dobbs, all the way back in 2006, absolutely nailed it back when CNN was telling the truth. And then Sidney Powell, I think, was right all along, but the courts just would not hear the case. But the bottom line is the connections between Chavez, Maduro, Venezuela, the Cartel del Sol, and through Smartmatic, which then was acquired, the Sequoia part of Smartmatic was acquired by Dominion, of course, the Dominion, the states with Dominion equipment had the key problems in the 2020 elections, very dubious results. So it's all interconnected. And then what I think is interesting, Brandon, to add to that is that since that time, we have now filed a petition to vacate Dominion certification on the grounds that it was never legitimately certified in the first place by the EAC. And since that time, we have corroborating evidence through your friends, Clay Parikh, Ben Cotton, you know well, who have explained in court and actually demonstrated hacks on authenticated copies of the server, and that the Dominion system is actually interconnected worldwide through X.509 certificates with a common shared value, shared worldwide. And that's how they connect them. And that was the testimony in court just last year. And that was the basis for our federal lawsuit. And that ties back with everything that, Patrick Byrne and Trump has come out with recently in terms of the Venezuelan connections into the elections. So we've got three things on Venezuela: the oil, the drugs, and also the elections, I think, to deal with.
Well, look at this from the Revolver. It says the damning email obtained by King Solomon. That would be, what's his first name, guys? You guys remember? The guy he's over at justthenews.com.
John Solomon?
What's his name?
John Solomon?
John Solomon. John, thank you. That's who they're referring to when they say King Solomon. They're referring to John Solomon over at Just the News. Through the Freedom of Information Act, confirms the Central Intelligence Agency conspired and succeeded in the overthrow of the United States government on November 3rd, 2020. In a stunning exchange, CIA Director Mike Morrell turns to fellow Director John Brennan and asks if he would join in toppling the United States government during the November 3rd, 2020 election. Brennan not only agrees, but also expresses his gratitude. CIA Mike Morrell, quote, "Can I add your name to this list? We'll be adding Leon Panetta, Sue Gordon," and goes on to give others, and lots of other IC, that'd be in intelligence community career folk. This is what's going, again, John Solomon's the one reporting this. Quote, "Trying to give the incapacity vegetable, particularly during the debate on Thursday, a talking point to push back on Trump on the issue, end quote. CIA John Brennan, okay, Michael, add my name to the list. Good initiative. Thanks for asking me to sign up, end quote. And then it wasn't just the 51 intelligence officials who were involved. The central agency itself was actively involved as well as its director and approved it. Now, again, this is all coming from John Solomon. Are you aware of this report, Attorney Tom Renz?
100%. I mean, this is some of the most egregious and mind-blowing. I mean, at minimum, this is seditious, if not treason. I mean, it's just the fact that these guys aren't in jail is mind-blowing to me. Now, I fully expect, and we all know that I complain about lack of prosecutions a lot. I do expect election prosecutions, and I expect them this year, and I actually think that's part of what Venezuela was about. But, you know, the fact that these guys are still walking around free is shocking to me.
Indeed it is. In fact, I think we have a little clip here. Let me just play it. This is John Solomon from Just the News. Here we go.
A short while ago, Just the News obtained this email. This is a very important email. It comes from the former CIA director, Mike Morrell. Yes, the guy that organized that letter from the 51 intelligence professionals who tried to fake you into thinking that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation when it wasn't. It is between him and John Brennan, one of the signatories. You know who John Brennan is? He was Obama's CIA director, right? He's the guy that told Obama, hey, Hillary Clinton is doing a dirty trick on Donald Trump called Russia collusion. Well, this is just before the presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Hunter Biden's laptop is flinging out there. This is what Mike Morrell, former CIA director, tells his successor, John Brennan. Hey, sign this letter because I'm, quote, trying to give the campaign, particularly during the debate on Thursday, a talking point to push back on Trump on this issue. A man with a security clearance, a man with the title of CIA director, knew that he wasn't creating an intelligence product, a Merrick civic duty with 51 people. He was trying to create a political moment. Damning evidence. We'll try to find out if Congress has this letter, but this is a very important piece. It is the ultimate proof that what went out on that letter was a political dirty trick coordinated with the Biden campaign.
Wow. All right, pick that up, please, Tom Renz.
Well, I mean, listen, what you see occurring here is an orchestrated campaign.
A short while ago.
Sorry, that's on my end. Sorry about that. Yep, keep going.
Okay, so this was a well-planned thing. Now, I want to put this in context because I spent a lot of time on the COVID stuff. Well, if you look at what happened, 2020 rolls around. You have a group of intel officials who were actively involved in interfering with the election. You have COVID, which we know now was created in the Wuhan lab with funding from Anthony Fauci, USAID, and a bunch of other places. USAID, by the way, we know was tied in with the intelligence community. So let me tie this back together for you. Brennan, Obama's CIA director, was almost certainly 100% aware that they created COVID in China. He was probably involved with the funding and the decision to fund. So COVID's sitting on a shelf. Fast forward to 2019, you got Event 201, all these things. You can see them planning to release this. I would argue that what we have here is a real opportunity, if anybody actually cared to get to the truth, to tie this in. The creators of COVID were the same people that were behind the election fraud, that were the same people that behind, stealing 2020. They were all tied in with Obama's CIA. They were all tied in with the Clintons. They were all tied in with all these people. It's the same people. Now, why it is that we're, not even talking about COVID, the COVID creation, the mRNA, you couldn't have stole 2020 without COVID as cover. I mean, you had to have the changes, the mail-in ballots, all these different things to cover for the election fraud that was occurring. That John and some of the others are talking about and have uncovered. This is a perfect plot, but we really need to expand beyond just looking at Brennan and those guys because Fauci and all these other guys, I think they were all involved in this. This was all part of the larger plan to steal and to create the Great Reset, which we're now experiencing.
I agree 100% with that. And let me go to a PowerPoint if I could. This is one that we've shown several times here. I showed it on radio today and TV today at 1 o'clock Central. But this is exactly what Garland and I've gone over. Here's that tweet from a couple years ago. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the most courageous newscast in 60 years. The CIA's murder of my uncle was a successful coup d'etat from which our democracy has never recovered. There you go, the CIA. I bring that up to show a pattern here. Then Tom Renz just mentioned this. Look at this screenshot from the World Economic Forum. Live simulation exercise to prepare public and private leaders for pandemic response, right? And then who is there? None other than the former deputy director of the Central Intelligence Agency, getting everybody ready in October of 2019 for COVID. You see 2019 to the left there highlighted. This would be their Event 201, I believe, is what they called that. And then here's the article from 1963 by former President Harry S. Truman saying, look, the CIA has turned into something I never intended it to become. When I brought it online, we got a real problem. I believe this ran in the morning. This would be about a week after the assassination, or about a month after the assassination of President Kennedy. And yet I'm told this thing didn't run again in the afternoon. So is that not interesting in of itself? And then it's a rather lengthy article and column. Everybody should read it. But then I bring you to this here, December 10th, 2020. Now, we've shown this many times. I think we started talking about this and showing it in 2021. This is the letterhead of the Congressman Bill Posey of Florida. And he's writing this to the Inspector General of the CIA, as well as the director of the CIA as well. And in it, Bill Posey, congressman from Florida, says, quote, my understanding is that the origins of Smartmatic began in Venezuela under the regime of Hugo Chavez. This election software was used for the presidential elections that Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro won. In each of those elections, opposite parties claimed that fraud occurred. In fact, the 2013 U.S. Department of State country report on Venezuela states in the executive summary that, quote, authorities announced that Nicolas Maduro had won the presidency April 14, 2013 by a 1.49% margin amid allegations of pre- and post-election fraud based on a number of irregularities, including government interference, the use of state resources by the ruling party, and voter manipulation, end quote. Furthermore, writes the congressman, in a recent sworn affidavit filed with a Georgia election lawsuit, a key witness describes firsthand accounts of how Hugo Chavez asked Smartmatic to design a new election system for Venezuela and, quote, most insistent that Smartmatic design the system in a way that the system could change the vote of each voter without being detected, end quote. The congressman says, I understand that Smartmatic went on to participate in every Venezuelan election until 2018. The witness goes on to state that in 2013 election, the, quote, Smartmatic electoral management system was used to manipulate and change the results of the person to succeed Hugo Chavez, end quote. The congressman says it is concerning that the creation of such system could have circumvented the will of the Venezuelan people and attributed to keeping Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro in power while their people suffered greatly. Knowing of the origins of Smartmatic software, was the Central Intelligence Agency aware of its use in Dominion equipment during previous U.S. elections and 2020 general election? Question mark. If so, did the CIA report the vulnerabilities of this software to other federal agencies or states? Question mark. Has the Inspector General's office conducted a national security investigation on the CIA's connection, if any, with Smartmatic, Citel, or any other company associated with election software or hardware? Question mark. Did foreign actors interfere in our election in states that use this questionable software? Question mark. And finally, please provide all relevant documents that deal with the questions above. The congressman then writes, the citizens of the United States need assurance that a free and fair election occurred. Without a legitimate investigation by the CIA and Inspector General, the outcome of the election results will be questioned by many Americans. Therefore, I urge you to fully investigate the CIA's role involving these election companies, end quote. Notice he went from asking questions to then finally making a statement. I urge you to fully investigate the CIA's role involving these election companies. Now, when I found this letter in my research, stumbled on it one day, I called up the congressman's office, asked to talk to the staffer in charge of this, got him on the phone. They were very excited. I called, told them I was working with people like Mike Lindell, Garland Favorito, and others. He said, may I conference in another staffer? I said, sure. He conferenced in another staffer. They gave me plenty of time. And then subsequently, after the phone call, sent me a big file of other documents. So this is something Garland and I and others have talked about for a long time. And it's exactly what we predicted in 2020 before the election, that our intelligence communities have practiced color revolutions and voter fraud overseas and brought it home. That's what I believe happened. Then I found in my research this article, I should say, from the Washington Times, and it is dated May 9th, 1984. And in this article, I'm just going to quote the bottom part. Senator Jesse Helms charged yesterday that the CIA and State Department and other assistants directly were provided to Mr. Durante's campaign. This is in El Salvador, without President Reagan's approval. No response was immediately available from the White House or State Department to the senator's charges, as to his charges. Last week, Mr. Helms asked President Reagan to remove the U.S. ambassador to El Salvador, Thomas Pickering, because he allegedly aided Mr. Durante's candidacy. But yesterday, Mr. Helms said that the ambassador was one player in a larger drama. Mr. Helms said the funding decision was made by the interagency group on Central America that coordinated policy in the executive branch. Mr. Helms said that the U.S. efforts to control the election outcome undermine, quote, the whole purpose of our policy in El Salvador to build democracy, end quote. Mr. Helms said that the support reported given to Mr. Durante included funds for 400 precinct organizers, a model press operation, technical advice, and funds for the, quote, listen now, quote, computer, keyword, computer voter registration system that disenfranchised 20% of the voters the first time around, end quote. That's 1984. Here we have Helms saying the CIA rigged the election in El Salvador. So, Garland, you and I have talked about this extensively. I don't know what you were saying before 2020 because you and I didn't know each other until after the election. People can go back into our archives saying we thought a color revolution was coming. The intelligence community would be involved. And I think that's exactly what happened. And now we have this report from John Solomon. Speak to all this, please, because how do you think it fits in with Venezuela and Maduro? I don't know what's going on there, but here he is giving thumbs up sign in pictures, smiling, posing with pictures with DEA agents and others. His wife is smiling at one point. Now, I know in court, they claim they were roughed up, that she has bruises, etc. I don't know. Maybe he went unwillingly, but maybe he went willingly, thinking the vice president there is maybe more dangerous to him and his survival, and he was ready to turn and come to the U.S. and spill his guts. I don't know. I'm only speculating. I can only ask questions, but I can certainly read body language. And generally, if you kidnap somebody out of another country, quote, kidnap them as he's been used, the words he's using, and maybe he's playing the role, I don't know. But when you take someone out of their country, the president of a country, and drag them here, I don't think you're going to see them giving thumbs up signs, posing with pictures. And even when some of the DEA agents helped him out of that van, that big armored vehicle, if you saw that video, he's a pretty tall guy, Maduro, and they helped him up on that deck. One of the guys patted him on the shoulder like, good job, good job. The body language between him and the agents was way too friendly. Like, this guy was not resisting. He is not someone they want to be aggressive with. That doesn't mean they approve of everything he's ever done, but it's almost though he was being treated with a level of respect of someone that said, come get me and be sure you get my wife. And I'm just asking, is this stagecraft? Was he fearing for his life? Was he willing to be taken? And is he then going to spill his guts? And does it tie into any of this?
Wow, that's a ton of stuff to unpack, Brandon. Let me start with a couple of things. First of all, I think you're really onto something there. There was one video when Maduro was wishing us a Happy New Year.
Yeah, can we find some of that, Logan, please?
When he came into some location here in the United States. But here's what's interesting. What I've heard from the Venezuelan sources is that you're really right. I think Maduro was willing to spill his guts, but I think he was afraid of not just the vice president, but the generals. You know, the Cartel de los Soles, the generals that have the suns on their uniforms. But they were there. That's part of that drug trafficking operation. And my understanding is that he was afraid of them, and that's why he couldn't exactly spill his beans. I think that they were he was under tremendous pressure, caught in a no-win situation there. So I think you're really onto something. Obviously, we're all speculating at the moment, but I think that he would sing. And, you know, as Mark Rubio alluded to, the fact that he was offered an exile and a very attractive lifestyle, but didn't take it. I think he didn't take it because of those generals. He was afraid of being executed by his own people. Again, that's just my guess. But you mentioned a whole pile of things. Just to try to top a few loose ends, you know, we know all the way back in 1975, the CIA had 200 media assets. We know that from the Church Committee, and that shows you the basis for this electronic vote manipulation. But I wanted to go all the way back forward to what Tom said, because he beautifully tied everything together. But up here in the CIA, you know, you got to go back to Brennan just for a minute. Remember Tulsi Gabbard's report, where it was John Brennan who was behind all that fake Russia election stuff, the Russia. It was him that ordered the substandard reporting. It was him that basically insisted that the Steele dossier be brought forward, even though it was not credible, and his own CIA people were telling him that. So he is instrumental in this whole Russia collusion thing and trying to really overthrow the United States government. I mean, that's by their own documents from the CIA and the DNI that are showing that. So I think you've got some real evidence. I just wanted to add to what Tom had already said, and it's really disturbing. And to Tom's point, why aren't these folks already in jail?
Let me go back to that picture of Maduro. Let's go to the video first, maybe, where he's walking through. That's where he says something about have a good night, Happy New Year. Here we go.
Good night. Good night. Happy New Year.
Good night, Happy New Year. Okay. He seems pretty relaxed. Now let's go to the picture where he's giving the thumbs up. Now, notice the gentleman that has his hand on his shoulder. Now, I don't know about you, but again, body language tells me that is not a hand of sit there, be still because we're afraid you're going to run off. That's a hand on the shoulder that seems to be, hey, thanks for sitting and taking a picture. Let's get a picture together. I don't know. This seems a little too friendly. Thumbs up. The guy's smiling. You know, when we've seen these guys captured in the past, some of the drug dealers, the people that are with them, their heads are down. They have their hand on the back of their neck, and they're pushing them down, and they're walking them to a plane. It's very humiliating the way they're treating them. It's very subservient. It's very dominating and domineering. You're not seeing that with Maduro. This seems to be a guy that is cooperating, Tom.
100%. So listen, I'm going to confuse everybody here because I'm going to actually talk truth instead of just, you know, picking a side. So think about this, House. Trump taking Maduro out's a necessary thing, right? So the CCP has used Venezuela as a beachhead to really disrupt and destabilize the Western Hemisphere for quite a few years.
Yes.
It's not just the oil. It's not just the rare earth elements. It's also the CCP, Russia, all these guys use Venezuela. They've destabilized. Look what we've got going on in Brazil. Look what we've had go on in Argentina and Chile, Central America, Mexico. I mean, this country has been used as the premier beachhead for enemies of the Western Hemisphere to destabilize everything over here. Right. So I support Trump doing this 100% because he was able to basically end a war without having a war. power and with no American casualties. It was a brilliant move. Maduro was not legally the president of the country. I mean, he stole the election. He's recognized as not legitimate by numerous people around the world. So, you know, a lot of people wringing their hands saying, oh my God, they arrested a president. They didn't arrest a president. They arrested a dictator that was trying to steal power from the duly elected people. So I'm 100% a fan of what Trump did here. Now, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. We think about the tie-in with the election and some of this, and my hope is that Donald Trump's got some sort of a deal going where he's going to get this evidence from Venezuela and use it to prosecute the election fraud. But the color revolution isn't over, and the CIA hasn't stood aside, right? I mean, there's been no accountability, so why do we think that there's anything, you know, that's stopped? Everybody that's done this has gotten away with it, and to our knowledge, not a single person has been held accountable for anything that's been done. So what else happened over the last 5 years? So if we look at 2020 as kind of a break in this, because that's when the election was stolen. What happened immediately after? Well, the CIA and its cronies and all the people moved into a manipulation mode, because that's a critical part of this color revolution. Since then, they've tried to control the media. You were told that you were disinformation if you spoke out against COVID. You were told that you were disinformation if you spoke out against election fraud. You were told, we were all called kooks. Those of us that spoke out in favor of Donald Trump and all this stuff. There's misinformation, disinformation. Now, it's interesting because now, fast forward to 2026, and now you see, well, we've got Donald Trump as a president. But we know that the CIA is still actively involved, trying to manipulate the FBI, trying to manipulate the DOJ. They don't want accountability. They're going to do whatever they got to do to keep their butts safe. And so what do we see now? Now we see, instead of them accusing everybody of disinformation on COVID and election fraud, now what we've got is the people who are calling for accountability are being called black pillars. The new disinformation label is really being called a black pillar. Now, we have because the CIA is very clever, they realized that they needed to buy off a few conservative influencers to try and make it look like this was a conservative thing and it was disloyalty to Trump, but it's not disloyalty to Trump. What's happening is those of us that are awake recognize that color revolution is continuing, and that the CIA is still pulling strings, still playing media games, and now they're just buying off a couple easy to buy, low rent, brainless, conservative wannabe influencers, and they've got them going after anybody that's asking questions or demanding prosecutions or accountability, and calling them black pillars. So we've got the new thing. I actually put out on Twitter today. I call it the Black Pill Revolution, because we need to have a revolution of us black. We're the truth tellers. We are the people that they call disinfo, misinfo during COVID and election fraud. And now we continue the fight against this color revolution by standing in truth today, just like we did before. And when we see the corrupt elements of the DOJ that are still there, that are tied in and controlled by the corrupt elements of the FBI, CIA, which are really hard to distinguish in some cases. They're going to try and discredit us. But the reality is this is just more color revolution. And my response to any of that is, well, when are we going to prosecute the guys at the CIA that were behind all of this? And why do you oppose me calling for their prosecution unless you're one of those guys? Just saying.
Well, I think that's excellent stuff there, no doubt about it. You agree with that, obviously, right, Garland?
Absolutely. I've been sitting here nodding my head the whole time Tom was talking.
All right, now let's get to some black pilling. What are you calling it now, Tom?
Well, they're calling it black pilling. Apparently, House, you and I are black pillars because we're actually telling the truth instead of just saying, hey, it's great that none of the Epstein rape, pedophile billionaire people are being prosecuted. We should be good with that, right? We shouldn't ask why it is that none of the people behind J6 have been prosecuted yet. We aren't supposed to ask why it is that none of the people involved with creating COVID that killed how many millions of people globally are in jail. We're not supposed to ask these questions. And if you ask these questions, you're now being called a black pillar because, it's honestly, it's a badge of honor. It's the new disinformation label.
And so I want to flesh this out a little bit because can we bring up, I can't bring up his email because I think he's cussing in there. Check it out for me if you would, Logan. Dan Bongino Did he just put out an email talking about, going after different people and infighting and blah, 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 which, I do understand his concern about people creating infighting and division within the America First MAGA movement and making everything about Israel and the Jews. And yet, some of them are also defending Islam every time we turn around and doing business with Islamists and whatnot, according to lots of reports. So there does seem to be that division. I agree with Dan Bongino if that's what he's pointing to. But my question is, when he comes out of the agency and he's out day one, I think now, is he also continuing a narrative basically like, don't question anything we do?
Well, if you're asking me, I think it's a really interesting question. Bongino, he was all hot air about how he's going to go after the Epstein and go after this and go after that. And then he gets in there and look at what happened with the Epstein debacle. Now, the Epstein is really important, House, and I'm going to tell you why. I said during COVID 1 million times, when do you trust a liar? Now, we know we got Kash Patel sitting there in Congress saying that it's all a hoax. There's no Epstein files. Now there's 5 million pages. That's an outright lie. Okay, it's just as crystal clear as can be. So they lied about Epstein. They lied about the Epstein files. I don't care why. It doesn't matter. The point is that they lied. So I don't trust them. Trust is damaged. Bongino said, he told us, he says, no, there's no Epstein file. It's all hoax. I mean, these guys were all saying this. These guys who said they were going to go after it all said that. Then they get in there and they oh, it's a hoax. We can't. So when do you trust a liar? This isn't blackpilling, right? But then the day Dan Bongino comes out of the FBI, oh, there's stuff cooking and we're getting stuff done. And listen, I will believe you when someone goes to jail. I pray to God Pam Bondi will prove me wrong and that over the course of the next few months, we'll see RICO cases launched on everything and that Fauci will be in jail. All the people with COVID will be in jail. Her former clients at Pfizer will be in jail. The people that are involved with election steal will be. I hope to God I'm wrong and that they prove me wrong. But until then, what I learned from COVID, what I learned from 2020, hell will freeze. Oh,
yep, you're back. What you learned from 2020 was what?
Was that listen, this all looks like a color revolution. We stayed quiet. We stayed quiet for years. We trusted the system. Don't just trust the system, trust the system. We did. And look where it got us. Look where it got us. We have a duty. I don't care if it's Donald Trump that's president. I don't care who's president. We have a duty when we see something wrong to speak out. And, I want to know from these guys. I want to know from these guys who are telling me I should never call anything out. How do you guys feel about Lindsey Graham and the accusations that he's getting kickbacks from Ukraine funding? Are you guys going to speak out on that? How do you feel about that? Are you okay with that? There's a long list of things that are objectively bad, that are objectively not MAGA. And I'm not going to support this because I'm actually MAGA. I want America made great again. I'm not going to sell out on any of these issues. And I don't give a damn who's going to try and bully me, how big of a pulpit they have, or how badass they want, because I'll come back at them with facts. And I'll trump your propaganda with facts anytime.
Can't argue with that. All right, let's go to the issue of Brad Rasenberger before I play some clips by Sidney Powell, the things she and I were saying years ago. Because you're down in Georgia there, Garland, and we have played this clip a gazillion times. Brad on election night, Secretary of State, basically saying there's only 2% left of the vote to count. There's no way Biden can win. Remember that clip, Garland?
Vividly, I remember playing it out there with you and one of Mike Lindell's summit.
That's right.
I think it was on the Sunday of the second or third summit, and we have played that continuously since. We've done press conferences on it. Nothing has changed, and we've even supported that video with the Secretary of State's own Clarity Elections reports that show with 99.5% left to already counted, 0.5% left to count it. Trump had an insurmountable lead, and U.S. Senator David Perdue had an insurmountable lead to avoid a runoff in that race. So, yes, I remember that clip, and I'll never forget it. And I'm sure Brad Ravensburger hasn't forgotten it either.
Here it is.
is Georgia, and that state's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, is with us now. Mr. Secretary, good morning on a busy morning. I guess the big question is, Hoda?
Yeah, we want to know, when are we going to get your votes? When are we going to find out who's won your state?
Well, we have about 2% left to go. We had great success yesterday. We had 4.7 million voters that voted. Record breaker for us, beats the 4.1 in 2016. We also had average wait time of only 2 minutes, statewide average. We have about 2% left to go, and you can see where we are right now with the results that have been reported. I don't think it'll change any of the outcomes, but that's what really people that make those predictions do. What we'll do is get...
Well, that was interesting, though. We were just getting to the good part there, because the Secretary of State said they got 2% left to count, Chuck. But he did not think it would change the outcome.
That's interesting.
But then he deferred to the prognosticators, which I think is over to you.
Look, I can just tell you what our models say and where those counties are. They are heavily Democratic counties, and it's the Atlanta numbers. So it is going to shrink. Perhaps, if I were an arbiter of an election result, I wouldn't want to be the one saying yes, and when we count the vote, it'll change the result. I think his job is to be the umpire.
Well, let's ask Mr. Secretary. Can you hear me now? You just were saying something.
I'm getting phone bombed or something.
Oh, okay. Well, fair. You're a busy guy. You're probably all your friends wanting to know the same thing we want to know, which is, when is Georgia going to report its results? But you said something interesting, sir. You said 2% left to count. You didn't think, however, that it would be changing the outcome. Right. Is that based on your analysis of where those votes are outstanding, or are you just guessing it because of the fact that it's only 2%?
We don't guess. What we do is report. We just see where the candidates are right now in both presidential, congressional, senatorial. And you look at how many votes are out there. Even if one of the candidates got 100%, it probably wouldn't be enough to move it one way or the other.
Gotcha.
But it is what it is. We'll just wait till everything's done. The county's working diligently to get that done today.
Wow. Okay, so if you only have 2% left to count, there's no way that Biden can win, yet Biden went on to win, did he not?
Yeah, that's right, Brandon. So let's just do the math right there. He said 4.7 million voters had voted. He knows that because the counties had given him their final reports. He says 2% left to count. That's 94,000 votes left to count. And if you notice on the graphic there from NBC Today, Donald Trump had a 103,715 or so odd lead. So it was virtually impossible that Biden could have beaten Trump on the morning after the election. And so regardless of what votes were still outstanding, the NBC talking head, his comments are totally irrelevant to the whole situation. Bottom line is, Trump had won. Brad Raffensperger has acknowledged it. And if you notice, he's very jovial there. And he says, we don't guess, we know. In reality, what happened is that Brad Raffensperger certified not 4.7 million votes, but almost just over 5 million votes. So there was another 200,000 to 300,000 votes that came in after the morning, that Wednesday morning, that he ended up certifying, and no one knows to this day where those 200 or 300,000 votes came from. But they were showing that only Fulton County was left to count, and only 13 precincts left, which have only been about 10 or 20,000 votes. But somehow these votes came in from metro Atlanta counties and out of thin air, and we don't know till this day where they came from.
And the reason why all this matters, I want you to answer this, Garland, as well as you, Tom, is that if we don't fix this problem, acknowledge there was a problem, fix the problem, we're going to be right back in the same situation this year with the midterms. Kiss it goodbye. The Marxists take over the House, the Senate. They impeach President Trump. Then we go into 2028, and you end up with the governor of Newsom of California, or God forbid, Kamala Harris. And we're right back in the same soup we were in, worried about the FBI kicking down our doors and hauling us off to prison because we dared to speak the truth, or charging us and prosecuting us under new laws related to hate crimes when we speak the truth about the LGBTQ agenda or Islam or any of this other stuff. So we are on a razor's edge to fix the problem, acknowledge what happened. It's being documented. More is coming out. We must demand a fix, or all of us on the screen right now are going to find ourselves targets of the Marxist deep state. Go to that, Garland, then Tom.
Exactly. No, you said it better than I can. I say exactly that same thing all the time. But just to add one more point to what Tom said earlier, everybody wants accountability. And it's interesting when you start talking about the Department of Justice, everything gets fuzzy. So let's try to clarify that a little bit. There's a criminal division and a civil division in the Department of Justice. Our experience is here in Georgia is that the civil division is doing their job. They don't have that many attorneys. I don't know, 100 attorneys or something like that. Very small number. It's in the hundreds, whereas the Justice Department and the criminal side has thousands and thousands of attorneys in the U.S. Attorney's Office. And the civil side is doing their job. They're helping us here in Georgia, helping us get the ballots. But it's the criminal division, to Tom's point, that is the problem. I think Tom's already made this point. So that falls and is not just to Pam Bondi, but to the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who is a longtime Colorado Democrat. So the question is, what is going on in the criminal division of the Department of Justice with all those attorneys? That is where we need the accountability to hold the John Brennans of the world accountable to the American people for what they have done.
Okay, before I go to this first of two clips from my friend Sidney Powell, they're going viral today by many different accounts. Tom, please respond to this issue of the fact that we are on a razor's edge. We're on borrowed time. If the Trump administration does not fix the problems that we're documenting here tonight, we're going to be right back in the same soup, as I said, come midterms, just a few months away, not to mention 2028. So this is really a red alert, is it not, Tom?
It's beyond that. Listen, this is the irony of this whole thing. This color revolution is working. And right now, what they're trying to do is we've been very effective in demanding accountability. So the CIA puts out this whole black pill narrative to try and slow it down. They're trying to damage our ability to demand accountability because they don't want it. And the willing nitwits who are being used in this they're actually doing a lot of damage to Donald Trump. The thing about this is my loyalty to Trump's vision of MAGA is really unwavering. I want MAGA, right? And so to do that, you have to recognize what's going to happen. We have done nothing to fix the election issue. We only have a few months left, right? We're already primaries. And here's the key. One thing that nobody's talking about is the election fraud occurs in the primaries. This is how they get rhinos through. This is how they get Democrats running as Republicans into place. We need to clean up the primaries so that we have fair primaries as well as fair elections so that we get good Republicans in. And we're right there at primary season. So you've got to understand, if we don't make changes immediately, we're just doomed. Plus, if there's not some changes and some accountability, I'm sorry, people aren't going to turn out for midterms. They're just sick of this. It doesn't matter how many times you call me a black pillar, call anybody else a black pillar. People are not going to turn out unless they see some action. We hired Donald Trump to drain the swamp. Pam Bondi is not doing anything in that. It's just that simple. So we have a number of things happening. And if it doesn't happen, if the Dems get the House and the Senate, which right now it looks like they're going to, unless some major changes occur, I'm guessing they will. And I do expect some big things to happen. So we'll see what happens. But if things don't change and the Dems get the House and the Senate, Donald Trump gets impeached. He's gone. And we are screwed because the Democrats will if they get power again, it's all bets are off. They will nuke their own filibuster. They'll get rid of that rule. They will change anything. They will do whatever it takes. This is the final showdown. There is no more opportunity. If you're loyal to Donald Trump and you're not demanding action right now, then you're either an idiot or a sellout.
Let's go to the first clip by Sidney Powell. I have it here, Logan. Here we go. Here is, again, this is the video from a few years ago that's now going viral today by many outlets because of so many of the revelations. By the way, let me add in the fact that don't we have a general from Venezuela that's in our custody that's written lengthy letters. Can you tell our audience about that real quick? Because that seems to back up what Sydney was saying, doesn't it?
Yes, I believe that's Carbajal is in our custody. And I think there's more than one general, Brandon, that is in our custody. And in fact, there's a variety of the voting machine technicians that are all in our custody
from Venezuela.
Right now.
From Venezuela.
From Venezuela, right. All of these are Venezuelans, and we've even seen, I think, a video testimony from one of them in the Tina Peters case. And this is another, Tina Peters is another issue. I hate to get sidetracked, but Tom made so many good points that the issue is we've got to get this straight for the primaries. And the fact that Tina Peters is still in jail right now is a real issue that should have been taken care of. That is the criminal division of the Department of Justice that is somehow and for some reason holding that up, and we don't really understand what's going on there. But all of this is going to filter through the criminal division. So that's what we need to focus on. And President Trump was ready to go. He announced back in, I think it was October, he was going to lead an initiative for new elections and how to conduct elections without machines and mail-in voting. We prepared our procedures. Our procedures are ready to go. We're going to have a press conference to talk about those in about a week. But everything is ready. We are ready to roll on this, and a lot of people around the country feel the same way that Tom does. We've got the president's back if he wants to move on elections. So the time to do it really was a couple of months ago. You want to do that about 6 months in advance of the primaries, to Tom's point. And we needed to move already. Now we're into January, and Georgia is the best example to prove what Tom was saying about the primaries controlling everything. That's where we get all these rhinos like the Brad Ravensburgers, the Chris Carrs, and even the Brian Kemp. So that Mike Lindell refers to as the triple crown of corruption, I think he calls it. But these are the guys, we're not getting killed by the Democrats in Georgia. We're getting killed by these Republicans who claim to be Republicans, but they're not. And they are what's really, really damaging us here in Georgia. So again, I love Tom's point.
Let's go to this clip. Maybe you guys, if you got a pen, piece of paper, take some notes on this first clip. Here we go. Yeah. Sidney Powell. I don't know when this was, but it's definitely been a few years now. This is what's going viral today for all the reasons we've been mentioning and what's going on in Venezuela and Maduro being in our custody now.
So one of the patents is from, so we're talking about multiple patents here by different people, but one of them is for a patent from 2006 from the Defense Department. Why would the Defense Department want to patent software that allows them to flip elections?
Yes, that's a good question, isn't it?
Do you know which division inside the Department of Defense? Is it one of our intelligence divisions inside the DOD?
No, at one point, there are actually two patents that are key. One in 2005 for dynamic auditing of elections that allows them to monitor it real time. And that was done with the National Institute of Health, which I don't exactly understand. At least that's what it says. And of course, these patents even admittedly say they will develop uses beyond, what they say in the patents themselves. So I think there's a lot of room there for people to use them however they want to be used. But then the one that allows them to calculate an algorithm to come out with a predetermined result of an election is the one from 2006. And I think that was the Defense Department. And then it was given to a university in New Jersey that is an international think shop, apparently.
What does that mean?
A lot of foreign students are at that university. Oh, and here's another interesting tidbit. A year before the election of 2020, Dominion Voting Systems assigned all 19 of its patents for election technology to the Hong Kong Shanghai Bank. And then there was an infusion of over 400 million, we believe, to State Street Capital, which owns Dominion now.
Okay, let's go back over that. The bank in Hong Kong ties back to Communist China, I'm guessing?
Hong Kong Shanghai Bank. And it was given to the patents are held supposedly by the Canadian branch of that bank. But yes, it's a Chinese bank.
Okay, so it's a CCP bank, and they injected funds into what?
Into, I think it's, I shouldn't say the name, and I might have the name wrong, but anyway, a hedge fund actually owns Dominion now, apparently.
And do we know yet the names of the people, the investors of that hedge fund?
We're still working on some of the details of that.
Okay, it sounds like to me you're getting really close to some stuff.
I think we're right square on top of it, which it would explain why even congressmen now apparently are trying to take my law license.
Yeah, exactly.
The flack is tells me I am right on the target.
And you know they're doing this to Dave Clemens as well, right?
Yes, I heard that.
So I don't know where to go next because this is like something out of a movie. So the Department of Defense, let's review, 2006, a patent coming from the Department of Defense that allows for an algorithm that can flip and change votes. The patent was transferred to...
It can predetermine, that algorithm can predetermine the outcome of an election. It's specifically to create a predetermined outcome.
And that, did you say that patent was transferred to somebody?
It's held now by a university in New Jersey.
And the university in New Jersey connection to Hong Kong? The university.
Well, there are a lot of foreign students at that university.
And that university is somehow connected, did you say, to the CCP bank?
That no, not the university, but Dominion itself assigned all 19 of its own patents for all its election processes. It assigned a year before this election to the Hong Kong Shanghai Bank.
Okay, so we have something going on with a patent in 2006 tied to the Department of Defense. We have other patents connected to Dominion and previous companies that were absorbed by them, correct?
Correct.
And then so here's again where we go back to where they end up grabbing clips of you and me and putting it all over social media, which they seem to love to do when you appear on my show, which is fine. Publicity is good. But this is where we go back to what we've discussed before, which is like this question. Why is it that I feel like this is really more about the intelligence community than voting machine companies? And when you have 2006 software or patents being developed by the Department of Defense, and then you have what the Dominion company is doing that you're reporting, and the connection is it goes back to CCP. So my question is there a relationship here between big government and big business? Is there a relationship here between the intelligence community and big business to flip elections? And were they doing it overseas and practicing? Maybe trying to stop communist regimes from coming to power, and then practiced it and honed it, and then used it over here?
Installing dictators of their choice.
Or exactly, maybe going the other way. Maybe going the other way and putting in the communist leaders.
There's no telling. There's no telling. We know from a witness who came to us early on that the original system created by Smartmatic was to rig elections for Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. And then that system was developed on and on by Smartmatic and also used to insulate the Maduro regime from being ousted. And of course, we know communist China is all over Venezuela and simply raping it of its natural resources while the people live in squalor.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Were you guys taking any notes during that? Who wants to go first?
Yes,
Garland?
Yes, indeed. Well, the first point, I don't want this point to get lost, but she used the term dynamic auditing, What that means is we're going to flip the votes on the fly to make sure everything matches up and you won't have any problems once the election is over. We've actually seen this in Georgia in 2024, where the Secretary of State has engaged a vendor here to do that very thing, to try to rescan ballots and fix results dynamically so that there are no problems. So to correct the problems that exist while the election is being conducted, and essentially that means rigging the election. So I love that term, dynamic auditing. I'm going to have to use that from now on. So a great term. Yeah, there's quite a few other things that Sydney said there. You know, everything that she said is becoming true now, as we're seeing over and over again. It's a really fascinating clip, but there's a lot of other things that she mentioned. I think she was referring to UBS Securities and Staple Street Capital, the previous owner of Dominion, who allegedly had two members that were on the board that were connected to the Chinese Communist government. I'm really fascinated about this DOD patent, though, that is whole. Why would the DOD have that? That's a question that you asked years ago, Brandon, when she was on the show. And I don't think we still have an answer to that today. That is a fascinating interview.
Thank you. I got one more clip. That one's only 3.5 minutes. Respond to that. Were you taking some notes during that, Tom Renz?
I might add a few thoughts. So one of the things I think was most profound there was, and by the way, I just want to shout out to Sidney Powell, who is an absolute hero. She put it all on the line for this country, and we're now seeing how right she was. You know, when Sidney was leading and really just a warrior on the election, it was at the same time I was doing the same stuff on COVID, right? And so I was kind of felt, I mean, Sidney's, if I was half the attorney Sidney Powell, I'd be pretty excited, right? I mean, she's just an incredible lawyer. But you know, we both led in these different areas, and I always felt for her because of the abuse she took and the beating she took, and I know because I went through the same thing. I mean, it was brutal. It was brutal. And they weren't a whole lot friendlier on us in COVID than they were in the election side. Right. We just approached it a little bit differently, so they couldn't get us the same way. So that was important. You know, just hearing Sidney and how right she was, I think that's critical. The other thing I think that really was important there is you notice that she talked about the bank, right? The bank owned by China. Venezuela, as I said, was just a beachhead for the CCP over here. And Venezuela never had the sophistication or the capacity to take care of our elections. It's a front for China, which, by the way, again, ties back to, you know, where did we create the COVID virus? Remember, our CIA was working in China, with China, around China. They knew that they were creating SARS-CoV-2 in labs. The evidence shows that it was created around 2015, 2016, under Obama's CIA, under Obama's administration, right? It may have been a little before that. We can't say for sure, but there's evidence showing 2015, 2016. At the same time, you see that we've got these old patents for flipping votes. You see all these things tying together. And what you've got to understand is the two critical unifying things from beginning to end. The corruption we see always comes back to CCP and CIA. Every single step of the way, right down to the color revolution that we're still dealing with today. We have got to get a hold of these, and until there is prosecutions, until you know, no one's even talking about our CIA's role in all this, right? Nobody's even considering. I haven't heard anybody even suggest that people from the CIA be prosecuted, except for me. Hey, by the way, are we going to ever prosecute anybody from the CIA? I mean, the people that were acutely aware that they were transferring technology to China to create SARS-CoV-2, that were acutely aware of these vote flipping technologies that were out there. I mean, they knew what was happening, but nobody's even talking about it. Nobody's got the courage to actually stand up on this. And I think that Sydney's clip there with you really kind of ties this all together.
All right, we got one more clip. from Sidney Powell. Let me get to it real quick. This one's only 3.5 minutes long, so let me get to that. It goes fast, so pay attention, folks. Here we go.
I reached out to you and said, oh my, there's so much going on, particularly because last night we had Seth Ketchel on, and Seth said, I think you need to get Sydney back on. I think she's got some breaking news. And you also sent out an email alert today. You do have some breaking news tonight, right, Sydney?
Yes, we sent out 2 email alerts. One has the contents or some of the contents of the government patents that I believe we discussed briefly last week that show that starting in at least 2003, the government itself developed an interest in and funded patents that will both real-time audit an election, allow them to manipulate the votes in an election, and inject false voters and false identifications for voters, as well as generate an algorithm that can predetermine the results of an election depending on the way they want it to come out. And those are at defendingtherepublic.org. You can go there to sign up for our newsletters. And the full patents are posted on the website now.
So that was a 2006 DOD patent, correct?
Yes, the patents were actually issued, I think, in 2006 and maybe one in 2009, but they were applied for and provisional patents were granted much earlier than that. And the research probably began much earlier than that, too. And then we've also identified, thanks to some patriots who brought it to our attention, a video that was done back in 2004 of a man who actually testified in front of a House Judiciary Committee field meeting in Ohio about having written an algorithm himself in the year 2000 at the request of a person in Congress who wanted an election rigged. So this has been going on a long time. What I find especially troubling is that it's been brought to the attention of officials. I'm documenting now at a number of times that people in positions of authority have been notified of this and done nothing about it, turned a blind eye to it. The only conclusion we can draw from that is that politicians, business leaders, global titans, corrupt government officials, whoever you want to call it, whatever it is, a large group of they out there have known this for a long time and have been using it to manipulate our elections as far back as the year 2000.
So this has been going on for 21 years.
Exactly. And it's, undermining and completely destroying the will of the people. It's rendered our entire election system a farce. And I have to disagree with Mr. LaRock if he thinks he's going to get any kind of fair election here, because both the man who wrote the algorithm and others have told us it's next to impossible to find the code. You would have to get in there very quickly after the election before anything could be wiped, rearranged. And the man who testified in 2000 said it was even possible to build a code so that it ate itself and disappeared.
So it ate itself and disappeared. Wow. Speak to that, Garland, then Tom.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So first of all, the man that she was talking about there is Clint Curtis, very famous gentleman. I've known him for years, and he was the man who testified in Congress at the Ohio field meeting she was referring to. He was asked to develop an algorithm, apparently by the then Speaker of the House, Tom Feeney, according to Clint Curtis's testimony. And he has done this, as demonstrated how simple it is to hack the machine and flip the votes, and that has been carried forward just recently last year by Clay Parikh, who and he demonstrated this on an authenticated copy of the Georgia server in a Superior courtroom just a year ago, using the authenticated copy of a Georgia Dominion server. So that is absolutely and positively real. And so, again, another fascinating interview. I'm still fascinated with these patents. But Brandon, I want to just add one more thing before flipping it over to Tom. You mentioned on your show a long time ago when I was on that, I thought it was something really important. You said the CIA used to be anti-communist, but now it appears to be pro-communist. And I think that's creating a serious problem for us because they seem to be on the wrong side of the American fence right now. So those are just a few things that I picked up on that little interview.
Incredible. What about you, Tom?
I think that, when I think about this whole interview collectively, House, I mean, think of all the stuff that we've talked about here. Tell me that there is no case to be made on this. Tell me that there's no reason for criminal prosecution. How can you say that? I mean, it's insanity. It's absolute insanity. Our government has the data. The information's there. And now we've got Venezuela. We're getting more and more pieces. What is the holdup? At the end of the day, we're approaching primary season, and the thing nobody wants to admit is that the Republican Party uses the fraud during the primaries just like the Democrats do during the general, right? I mean, not all of them. There's a lot of good Republicans out there that would never, ever do that and that have fought hard. But there's also, explain to me how every time I go to Kentucky, everybody in the state tells me how much they hate Mitch McConnell, yet he wins every primary. I mean, listen, the corruption, and maybe he's not the best example. I'm sure we could talk to Seth Keshler or someone else and find some better examples. But at the end of the day, the corruption is manifest. It's obvious to anybody that looks at it. When are people going to go to jail? Now, I'm going to make a prediction, House. I'm going to predict right now, we will see arrests and we will see people going to jail over election fraud. You know who I don't think we will see arrested or go to jail for election fraud? The politicians that benefited from it. The politicians that were behind it that almost certainly paid for it. We'll see mid-level nobodies. We'll see some programmers. We'll see some people, and we'll probably see some people that are relatively important in this go to jail. But at the end of the day, there's only one way to fix this, and that is to separate the computers from the election. Paper ballots, hand counted, same-day voting. That's it. It's not complicated, but it's the only way to actually have free and fair election. Now, if this was a Democrat or a Republican issue, ask yourself why neither party will support that. If you don't think Republicans are benefiting from election fraud, ask yourself why, when we have a majority in the House, a majority in the Senate, and a president that actively wants to get paper ballots and same-day elections and hand counting, ask why it is that they can't get a law passed. And the answer is because everybody knows the Republicans are using the voter fraud just like the Democrats. Both parties are using it. And so until we arrest politicians, until we hold the people that are benefiting from this fraud accountable, until we get rid of this concept of political elite, people who are above the law, until we quit treating justice as a two-tiered system where billionaires can rape children and get away with it with impunity, where politicians can commit fraud and insurrection and planned insurrection, conspiracy, RICO, and never even be investigated. Until we get rid of that, this continues. The swamp isn't drained until we do something about this. And right now, I've seen zero evidence that there is any inclination at all to go after the people at the top of the food chain. I've not seen the people who funded this. I've not seen any of the billionaires who benefited from it. I've not seen the politicians who benefited from it. What we see here and what you've done today, House, is done an incredible job of showing the case for election fraud. And the question I have is, when are we going to cut the head off the snake and do something about it?
Amen. All right. So well said. So well said, guys. Well, there you go. That's the story tonight. And we are on limited time. We're on borrowed time. And it's really up to us. Because we see in the streets of Iran, the young people wanting liberty and freedom. We've seen the people in Venezuela celebrating, although they're a long way from having freedom. They still have a regime to deal with. I don't know what the American people are going to have to do to wake up, to realize, well, as Ronald Reagan said, we're but just one generation at losing freedom. And we're very close. I'm going to say it again. We're on a razor's edge. And I know people think, well, President Trump's president. We have nothing to worry about. President Trump is one man. He can't do it all. It's not the way our system is built. And we shouldn't expect him to do it all. That would be selfish. You know, he He has almost gotten himself killed. And he could have stayed and enjoyed his life as a billionaire, multi-billionaire with a private jet and properties all over the globe. But he stepped up and he ran. And we don't have to agree with everything he's done or everything he'll ever do, but we are far better off with him as president and having been president the first time and the second time. We're far better off. The rest of it is up to us, the people, right? To encourage him, to challenge him. Encourage him when he does great, challenge him when he gets off course, but certainly as we're commanded as Christians to pray for all of our elected officials, but certainly for President Trump. And all I can say is it is up to us, the American people. One man can only do so much. But if we don't fix this problem and fix it fast, we're going to be, again, a nation that is gone, over, done. And that's sad. I don't know how else to say it. I don't want to go back to those days where I have to worry about the FBI kicking in my door every morning at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. I slept with that for years during Biden. And I don't know about you guys, but my wife feared that, you know? And when President Trump came back into office, we began to sleep again knowing we didn't have to worry about the FBI kicking in our door at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning. That's where we're going back to. Garland, in closing, did you fear that? Do you fear that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. You know, and your good friend, Roger Stone, experienced that in a extreme dose. And the memories of that just haunt me, of them FBI knocking on the door at 5 o'clock in the morning with a team of, I think it was 18 people. And then they alerted CNN in advance so that they could basically film the whole thing. So absolutely, we have been concerned about that. And just like you and Melissa, we sleep a little bit easier since November of 2024.
Yep. But that's those rolling worried about what's coming in the morning can return, Tom. Did you have any of the same fear that, you know, that Garland and I have had?
Someday I'll share publicly some of the stuff that I dealt with. You know, I mean, how do you remember for the first year or so of COVID? I mean, I led everything. I was the resistance.
Yep. You were here with us filming with Dr. Simone Gold and others, including the man that went on to become the Latipo, become the Surgeon General of Florida. You were here in our studio. We recorded that with them.
Yeah, I was there. I was there before the frontline doctors stood on the Supreme Court steps. I was there before any of these guys. I started fighting this the day they started locking us down, and I launched the first major case that had any impact in September of 2020. I mean, we've been on this from the beginning, and the hell that we went through, the attacks on me, my family. I mean, House, you remember me? I don't think I ever shared this with you, but there were a number of times that I came on your show, and I said, "Hey, House," and I made a joke out of it. I said, "Just to let you know, I'm loving life, and I have no intention of suicide or dying anytime soon." I said that because we had legitimate, real death threats, not some crazy guy in the comments on Twitter. I had stuff sent to my house. I had a picture sent of my family sent to me one time. I had people show up at my house, knock on my door. I one time had someone follow me from my house to my gym, come up to my car and hand me a package through my window before I got out. You know, I got to tell you, House, some of the stuff that we experienced there was no joke. And, you know, it's okay. When you stand against evil, that's what you deal with. I mean, you know, I was attacked by crooked courts, by crooked people, crooked this, crooked that. There wasn't a single spot in my life I wasn't attacked. And, you know, I think we're getting ready for round two, because I think that with the CIA crew and their Color Revolution crew is real upset because we're calling them out and we're demanding accountability and demanding action. It's a foot race right now, because if President Trump does put his foot down and demand something gets done, it will happen. And, you know, no matter, they don't want us doing that. They don't want that happening. So we're getting a lot of blowback now. I'm seeing a pickup on that right now. It's mostly from nobodies that I don't care about. And I don't really so I don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. And I don't care about influencers. I don't care about that. That's irrelevant. Those guys are clown shows. The reason they're important, though, is that Donald Trump watches the media. And if they convince Trump not to act, what they're going to really do is they're going to delay justice, and that's going to kill us in the midterms. And that is the point. That is the goal for the CIA. That is the goal for the Color Revolution people. That is the goal for the bad guys. They want delayed justice, and they want us to all look and to be happy when some mid-level nobody goes to jail, and pretend that we don't notice that the Clintons and the Obamas and the Soros crew and the people that are way, way high up the food chain, that none of them ever end up in jail. We're not supposed to notice that, because we're supposed to clap and cheer politely when we see some mid-level nobody go to jail. But House, we're going to fight. I'm going to come back on this show. I'm going to come on any show. I'm going to do my show. I'm going to do anywhere I can. We're going to keep speaking out. We're going to keep speaking the truth. We're going to keep, pushing to get people out there. And I'm going to wear that badge of black pillar with great honor, because I'm going to tell you what, we are not selling out, and I don't give a damn who tries to push it.
Well, again, I appreciate both of you guys and all the sacrifice, all the effort, all the tens upon tens upon tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, actually hundreds of thousands of dollars that both of you have put in time and service and work and research, unpaid in so many ways, for the quality and quantity of your work. Guys, thank you. I really appreciate both of you. Garland, you're at voterga.org, voterga.org. And Tom, you're at tomrenz.com, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we've had it on the screen. I hope folks will mark your websites and keep track of you. And of course, we will as well have you back here. But things seem to be unfolding in on a positive note. Things seem to be unfolding. Things are coming out. And let's pray we get a lot from Maduro and a lot from these other guys out of Venezuela, and that President Trump will get the right counsel to do the right thing and save the republic by saving our elections, because that's the only way we can do it.
Right.
Obviously, through the Lord, but we've got to have free and fair elections, and may the Lord help us to do that. Thank you, gentlemen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Alex.
Wow, great guys. Garland Favorito, Tom Renz, great guys. So glad they were with us tonight. All right, guys, do you appreciate what we're doing here? We've got to stop multiple times, taking commercial breaks there. We did. We kept going. We need your support. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Again, worldviewfoundation.com. Will you also go to worldviewtube.com/sponsors? Get on the Bella Grace. Get on the Elixir. Get on the Bella Melts, the Bella Trim. Get on all that, folks. It's vital that we have your support through that. All right? So I want to do this real quick. I want to go right away to two very important interviews, okay? Two very important interviews back to back here, guys, because they are about your health. They're about 2026. They're about funding this network. And that comes from groups like Bella Grace, Dr. Lucky and the team, and then, of course, Dr. Lana. So I hope you won't run off. I hope you will stay through these two next interviews, because they are about our health, and they're about also supporting this network and a way you can support your health and the network at the same time. And so it's vital we have your support through those foundations and through these sponsors. So please don't run off. This is a very important interview coming up with Dr. Lucky and then Dr. Lana. All right?
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
All right, join me now for a very quick update is Dr. Lucky. Now, as many of you know, Melissa and I have both been taking the Bella Melts. Of course, you know I take the elixir each and every day, but we've been doing the Bella Melts. You can do about 3 a day. Some do more than 3, but 3 a day. Curb your appetite, stimulate your natural GLP-1. That's key. Stimulate your natural GLP-1, made of all natural ingredients. You just take one of these right out of the package. It's like a little caramel. It tastes really good. Take one out of the package and you just suck on it until it dissolves. And you can do this, a couple hours before a meal, maybe in the day. If you start getting the munchies or you think you're going to get the munchies in an hour or two, take one of these, curb your appetite, speed up your metabolism, drop weight. I'm down to around 166. Now I was at 179 at my peak but I've been dropping weight the last few years deliberately, but I've come down now to 160, about 166. We'll see how much further we go. Melissa's getting great results. Many of you are getting great results. The sales of this have gone crazy. How many of you are doing this? And of course, 2026, here we are, January 2026, great time to get on a New Year's resolution to lose weight and get in shape. Joining me now is none other than Dr. Lucky. What do you think, Dr. Lucky? Happy New Year. What do you think about the progress we're making here?
Happy New Year, Brandon, and to all the listeners out there. We are just absolutely ecstatic with not only the product of our Bella Melt, but also the results we're seeing all around the country. You know, when you have a product that's all natural, that doesn't require a prescription, that doesn't require sticking needles inside of you, but curbs your cravings and suppresses your appetite and helps you burn more fat naturally for more energy, then we've got a home run. And I tell you what, I'm using it in my practice and I'm using it at home as well with great results.
All right. Tell me about some of the results that you're seeing in your practice.
Yeah, a couple things. You know, we have a medical weight loss practice in our office. So at the end of their program, about the 3/4 of the way in the program, we're putting them on the Bella Melt so that they don't rebound and gain the weight back. But we also have patients that come in that aren't qualified for any of our programs. So we immediately put them on the Bella Melts. And we're also noticing those patients that are on our medical weight loss program, when they're using the Bella Melt, we actually can use a much lower milligram of the medication. So it's been so fantastic.
Okay, wait a minute. Just so we don't confuse people, the medication is separate from the Bella Melt you're talking about in your program.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but there are people who require the medication because they are, very large, talking about obese and majorly overweight, and the only way they can really get through is with a little bit of medication. We hold them to a 12-week program, but we use not only our elixir, because remember, those GLP-1 prescriptions are going to destroy your collagen production. So you have to have your elixir for that great collagen. But we use the Bella Melts along with the program to lower that milligram and to help.
Okay, now you're talking about the medication, but if any of us aren't on the medication, we don't have to worry about any negative side effects.
No negative side effects.
If we're just doing our Bella Grace and our Bella Melt, we're good to go.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. Hopefully most of your listeners are not on them and they can just go to that Bella Melt and the Bella Grace Elixir. But if they're all people are on there, we created this Bella Melt for them to use it as well.
Okay. So for the average person who we're talking to, I think now is probably not doing anything extra. They're just, they're not on any kind of weight loss program or medication. They're just wanting, like Melissa and I, to lose some pounds, curb the cravings, speed up our metabolism, particularly 56 years old. Our metabolism slows down. We want to get a little more trim. The Bella Melts are great for that. Melissa, within the first week, lost 3 pounds, and she was only doing 1 a day. Then she found out she can do 3 or 4 of these a day. Someone just emailed and said, how many a day do you take? Well, it's up to you. We like to do like 3 a day. When do you encourage people to take a Bella Melt? 2 hours before a meal, or just any time they think, I might be starting getting the munchies around 3 o'clock, because normally I get them. I'll take one at 2 o'clock to curb my munchies.
That's exactly right, Brandon. So I have our patients will wake up, or what I recommend our ambassadors to do is have their coffee in the morning or their green tea, and then mid-morning have a Bella Melt, enjoy a Bella Melt, have a sensible lunch, because that Bella Melt's going to help you have a sensible lunch and decrease those cravings for carbohydrates. And then around 2 or 3 o'clock, as you know, most Americans that are sitting at home or at their desk get those cravings, that sugar craving at 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Have one then. That way, when they get to their house, they're not overeating before or during dinner.
Perfect. Let me show it again here. It's in a little package like this. I don't even know how many come in a package, but
30.
30? So 30. So, if it's one person, you could probably make these last a month, right?
That's right. With one a day. Right now, Brandon, I don't know if you know this, but we actually have a promotion for $99, and today's the last day. They can get a Bella Melt with a Bella Trim. And our Bella Trim product, if you think about both of them synergistically working together, the Bella Trim with science, with clinical science, shows that it will help lower your blood pressure, lower your cortisol, and also help you burn more fuel for energy. And then the Bella Melt is going to tell your body to burn fat for that energy. So you get both these products targeting the mitochondria to speed up energy production and speed up fat for energy production, along with curbing your cravings and suppressing that appetite. Today's the last day, $99 for both products. If you haven't tried it yet, get back with Brandon. Go to melissahowesbg.com. Get that ordered today on their website.
I want to go real quick to the elixir because, I'm sold on the elixir. I've been taking it now since November of 2023, December of 2023. So now I've been over 2 years. I take it every day, one for sure. Sometimes I do 2 a day. The collagen, the peptides cut short, so your body actually absorbs it. I'll be 57 in April. My daughter comments regularly about when she comes to town, as she is again back now in town, that, you're looking so good going on 57, the lack of wrinkles, your skin looks great because she went to esthetician school. So she notices all this kind of thing. The hair growth is doing well. I'm constantly having to cut my fingernails more than I ever have in my life, get a haircut more than I normally have to in the past. I'm just happy all around. The collagen, the cat's claw, that anti-inflammatory, which a lot of our problems are inflammation related. And then the astaxanthin, which crosses the brain-blood barrier and takes on those free radicals. Speak to those 3 ingredients in this elixir right here, please. By the way, over 100 clinical trials, 100.
That's right. I will agree with you on this. You're looking fantastic. And I just turned 58 myself in December. And people tell me the same thing all the time. You're less wrinkles, better hair, the whole thing that you're hearing as well. So if you haven't tried it, now is the time. Get on the Bella Grace Elixir for those reasons. Synergistically, the collagen, the astaxanthin, and the cat's claw is going to reduce and eliminate inflammation in your body. It's also going to reduce oxidative stress in your body, which is correlated with over 300 diseases in the body. Whenever you can eliminate inflammation and reduce free radicals, you're going to be a healthier individual. You're going to look better, you're going to feel better, and you're going to perform better.
And you know what I don't do? I don't get up 3 times a night to go to the bathroom. I can now do it in 1 time. That's since getting on this. Bella Grace.
Yeah, it supports healthy blood vessels. It supports a healthy immune system. It supports a healthy nervous system. So all around, you're being supported with every system in the body.
Yeah. Well, we're sold on the products. They have great clinical trials. We don't promote stuff that we don't believe in, that we don't use. And the results speak for themselves. The clinical trials speak for themselves. And we highly, highly urge you to check out melissahowesbg.com on Bella Melt. Of course, the elixir, and then, of course, you have the Bella Trim as well, the skincare, all of it's there that Melissa endorses, and that I don't use the skincare, but I use the Bella Melt and I use the elixir, and then there's the sleep, the restorative sleep.
That's restorative sleep. Tonight, and today's the last day. It's buy one, get one free. So if you haven't tried these goodies, they're also 35% off. And we also have 35% off of our skincare. Today's the last day. So again, if you haven't tried, if you've had a great result on the Bella Melts and the Bella Grace Elixir, and you're looking for something for the new year to make your skin look better or sleep better, get on her site today and get them ordered. Today's the last day of those promotions.
There it is, melissahowesbg.com. Join us in 2026, folks. Getting healthier, thinner, in shape. You can have everything in the world. But if you don't have your health, you can't enjoy any of it. You can't enjoy your spouse. You can't enjoy your pets. You can't enjoy your family. You can't enjoy your hobbies, your health. You don't want to get where you're like, oh, I wish I had started taking care of my health 10 years ago. I may not be in this mess. Start today, like so many of us are, taking care of our health now so that we don't end up like maybe some family and friends that you see now that are basically immobile. They can't get around, right? So this is the year. Take it seriously. Make some great strides. And these products, I think, will greatly help you the way they have us. MelissaHouseBG.com. And you're supporting the network at the same time, because with each purchase, they're supporting us. So thank you for doing that, folks. Dr. Lucky, look forward to having you back. Happy New Year.
See you soon. Happy New Year to you and all your listeners.
You too, my friend. MelissaHouseBG.com. There you go, folks. We said we'd make it quick. We'll be right back after this break.
I'll tell you one little quick story. We had a Worldview Weekend client who lived in California, lost their house. Very wealthy guy. He didn't use Bitcoin. He came over here, drove to Arizona with $286,000 worth of his gold because he had no money and no house available. His bank was shut down because he couldn't have access to his bank account.
Was this during the fire? Was this during the fires?
During the fire. Didn't have his driver's license. He lost it. The state wouldn't give him a new license because he had no active mailing address. Real mess. So he came to Arizona to buy a house. He's moving everything over. He said, the only thing I got in my possession that I can get liquid with right now is my gold. I gave him a check for $286,000, and guess what? I didn't need his social, his driver's license. Sort of smiled, and I said, you know, I know you and Brandon talked about how this worked, but boy, this is great. I feel good. I got my money. Nobody bothered me, and I'm protected, and it's private.
Just simply go to worldviewgold.com, fill out the form, worldviewgold.com. Joining me now is Dr. Lana. We have some big announcements, something I just found out about today, folks. You love the phytoplankton, right? I take it every day. One scoop, 90 billion, equivalent of 90 billion plant cells. Look at this. We have they redid our page for us. Beautiful, isn't it? We have of course, the pet product. Let's go to the Dolly cam. Dolly gets a half a scoop on her food every day, as you know. I take it in water. She takes a half a scoop on her food every morning. Don't you, Dolly? Yeah, you do. You like your phytoplankton, your Gatatana? Dolly? Well, you seem really enthused today. Yeah. Well, she is normally very energetic and outgoing, but when she comes into the studio, she has kind of been trained to chill. We don't let her run around in here and act crazy. She'll knock cameras over. So she's actually been trained to be this calm. If I were to go out of the studio and bring her with me, she would come back up to life, particularly if I grabbed out a tennis ball or a Frisbee. But yeah, she's also gets quite a bit of exercise, believe it or not. And so this is normally nap. But yeah, she gets it every day. Now, we have some big announcements here because we also have some brand new products. Brand new products. Let's go there real quick. MelissaHouseGPA.com. And if you click on, let's go to shop up top, shop. And we'll look what pops up. Phytoplankton Rescue Cream. This is brand new. And phytoplankton infused soap. Joining me now to talk about all these great products is Dr. Lana. Dr. Lana, I just found out today about the Phytoplankton Rescue Cream and the soap. Tell us about those. By the way, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And I have seen Dolly outside of the studio, and she is very friendly and very active because she takes her Gatatana.
Yes, she is. My wife actually says sometimes, maybe we should take her off the Gatatana. And I say, no, not happening, because she's very energetic. She's energetic without it, but I do think the Gatatana gives her a little bit of extra health and energy, but I'm not complaining about it because I'm so happy she's healthy. Because, you know, a lot of dogs, they die by 7 or 8. They're dying of cancer. My last one, you know, this is ridiculous. I want this dog to live a long time. So she's always energetic, but I have to say, I think the Gatatana makes her a little bit more active. But that's because it works.
No, absolutely. We have so many dog stories and cat stories and animal stories. It's incredible. We have people that use it for their pets. They use the human version and the pet version, either or. Incredible stories, and everyone loves their furry, animals. They're part of the family. So the skin cream is very exciting because I want to share with you, and honestly, I'll share that I haven't. And by the way, Happy New Year. God bless all of you as well. We're very, very excited about this year, and may God bless us all. But yes, the Gatatana for our own system. And what happens with the skin cream is, go back to this phytoplankton for a second. And all of you, we all here, we believe in God, and nature or God made this product. Man didn't make it. He just dried it. God made it. So with the skin cream, when you have phytoplankton internally, it helps to fuel your cells, your mitochondria. It also, besides putting perfect nutrition inside your cells, it helps your body. It's a prebiotic. So it hits the water, or the coconut water, whatever, hits the liquid, gets in your body, and it multiplies good bacteria, which is incredibly important for your metabolism, for your digestive system, for your immune system. So the same thing happens on your skin. It helps promote good bacteria on your skin. We have stories with the skin cream, and you could put it right on after your shower, anytime, your hands, your feet, anywhere on your skin. And pardon me, need to drink more of my water. Pardon me. You can put it anywhere topically on your skin, and it's helping that good bacteria to flourish on your skin. We have had story after story, yes, anecdotally, but we know scientifically what the phytoplankton does. But we've had story after story of people with all sorts of skin issues, shall I say. And my friend's a medical esthetician, and she calls it angry skin to be compliant. You could have any kind of angry skin on your face, your neck, your body, your feet, your hands. We have someone that actually had a growth of just nasty skin on their feet, and they kept putting the cream on and taking the Gatatana internally, and it literally went away. So you're balancing the good, healthy bacteria.
So can I stop you right
on
there?
your
So
skin.
let's say we have ladies in the audience that have rough feet. Some guys too, but they get those heels that are really rough. Some people have cracked and bleeding heels. You're saying of people getting results from this?
Absolutely. I put it on my legs and my heels and my feet after the shower all the time. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to make sure, we're professionals here, you want your nails to look nice in your hands. And if you live in a cold part of the United States, it's fantastic for your hands every day. You could just keep it by your bedside. And when you wake up in the morning, you can put it on. And especially before you go to bed, put it on. And I want to say that you do this with the internal nutrition, which is your Gatatana. If those of you, I'll jump over that for a minute, but yes, you put it on your hands, your feet. We absolutely love it. Guys, after you shave, you could put it on your face after you shave. Ladies, you shave your legs, you can put it on your legs after you shave, but you're putting, God's nutrition right on your skin to balance and flourish that good bacteria, and you're getting nutrients in your cells. And I will share with you, I know it's January, so to jump on weight loss just for a second, that goes back to the reason we have cravings, and we crave sugar and we crave junk and all of that. So you have the skin cream, and now you've got the internal Gatatana. When it comes to weight loss, most people aren't going back to really common sense. And I'm not talking about, yes, don't eat sugar, don't eat gluten. That helps. Of course it does. But if you don't control your appetite, you're in trouble, right? Well, most people don't realize appetite control has to do with your good and bad gut bacteria. So, and that kind of signals all the hormones, the ghrelin and the leptin, and the hormones that make you feel hungry and hormones that make you feel full. If you don't have good gut bacteria, beneficial gut bacteria, you will have cravings, and you won't get that weight off, and you will want the junk food, and you won't be able to have the proper messaging in your gut. And what helps you have that proper messaging so you're full when you're full and you don't have as many cravings? Good gut bacteria. And what do you think this does? This provides a plethora of good gut bacteria. It's a prebiotic, but it's not something you have to go buy in the drugstore or buy at the store, the health food store. And it is not another nutrition or multivitamin. This is all in one. It is like a multivitamin, trace mineral. It's 47% protein, but it also has that prebiotic factor that when it is put in water in your system, it grows and grows and grows good bacteria. So it's almost like coating your gut with good bacteria. And that helps with everything, your sleep, your mood, your cravings, your immune system. And most people don't talk about the prebiotic part of the Gatatana. And that helps with the skin too.
Excellent. Now tell me about the soap.
And the soap, the same thing. You've got this now. You're not only cleansing your body, but you're leaving it. You know, like if you ever take a harsh soap, shall we say, not harsh, but maybe a soap that you buy in the grocery store that isn't, you know, it's just basically a soap. A lot of them leave your skin very dry, and because they're not replenishing that mantle, the acid mantle back on your skin, they're not balancing that bacteria again on your skin, that pH balance. And this soap does that because literally it's phytoplankton in the soap. It's great to shave with, great to shave your face with, guys, great to shave your legs with, ladies, great to just use in the shower. And you will feel the just the natural part of the soap as you shave and as you're using it in the shower. It just almost melts into your body because it's the phytoplankton. So it's really brilliant. But I just want to say it goes in conjunction with, you have to use it internally, and those are your external tools. And I'll tell you what, even if your pet like has an issue or a cut or anything like that, you can, you know, use the soap on your dog's paw or anything like that, or cat, and the cream as well. It's not going to hurt them, but definitely include your pets when you're giving them that internal.
So if you have a dog that say has an issue with dandruff and dry skin or irritation or whatever, you could use the phytoplankton infused soap for them.
It won't, right. It's not going to hurt him at all. It does nothing but help. And I think you all know this by now that I've said this. This Gatatana, because it is not made by man. Yes, Hunter and everyone at GPA, Global Phytoplankton Alliance, they dry it so we can eat it. But this is made by God. There is nothing added to this. So you can give this to any member of your family. I mean, a child, I don't care if they're 2 years old or 102 years old, give it to your animals. There's no contraindications if you're on any medication. I don't care if you're taking treatments for that really scary disease that starts with a C that we don't even want to say. It doesn't matter because you're just putting God's nutrition in your body.
Well, that's how the guy started it. He got a terminal diagnosis and he started eating the phytoplankton. And his daughter was like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, what I got to lose?" And in fact, here's the news story on that. He ended up living another 10 years.
Exactly. And
that's
he just
how
had weeks.
Global Plankton Alliance was born.
He watched, yes, David watched Tom Hunter. He was there. People were driving to that shellfish farm in droves to get phytoplankton. And then David went, 10 steps further over the last 20 years. And he found the most nutritionally comprehensive, basically the strongest, highest quality strain of phytoplankton in the world. And that's what you have here is pure nutrition getting inside your cells. It doesn't matter. Our cells get damaged as we age. Our cell membranes get clogged and you can't get like hormones in them and you can't get toxins out and you can't get glucose in because as we age, our cell membranes get damaged and they get clogged. That does not matter because the tiny, tiny microscopic size of the Gatatana gets that nutrition in your cells. And it's 47% protein, trace minerals, omega-3s. I mean, you're going to save a lot of money. You don't need your omega or you don't need your multivitamin or omega-3s. And now you have something to put on your skin as well that you can help. When I mean your entire family, I mean from your grandchildren to your grandparents, and find a way. I know this tastes like the ocean because God made it and it tastes like plants. So
but
it doesn't taste
bad. The first couple times I took it, it tasted a little green, but now I don't even recognize it. It does not have a bad taste. You're not going to drink it and go, ugh. And the first couple times it tastes kind of green, smells kind of green, but after the first few times of taking it, it doesn't even bother you anymore. And I have it oftentimes with my meal. Okay, my dinner, I often have this with my dinner. Okay, I take it once a day, a lot of times twice a day. And Melissa will say, "What would you like to drink with your dinner?" And now she doesn't even ask because she knows I want Gatatana with my dinner. So I'm not eating my dinner and then having to down something that tastes horrible at the same time because the the phytoplankton Gatatana water mixed with water, to me, now tastes just like drinking water. I don't notice a taste in it.
Right. And you really want to shoot it. And that's fine if you're taking it with a meal, because you could do it with a meal, without a meal, anytime during the day. And most of you just want to shoot it down. All you need is a couple ounces of cold liquid. And a lot of people take it in coconut water or flavored water. Sometimes, you know, if it's a child, apple juice, or like chocolate almond milk.
Just
or
don't heat it up is the main thing.
Do not heat it up, because this is a living plant
You don't
from
want to
the
kill
ocean.
it.
You don't want to kill it because it's going in your body.
Let me go to the
fueling
tetrasod.
yourself.
There's the tetrasod now is a little more expensive. Who should be taking the tetrasod? If I ended up with something like the man that developed it did, I would probably run and start ordering that. Correct? If I had a major health crisis, right?
Right. Tom was the guy at the shellfish farm, but I don't mean Dave Hunter ended up development. Yes, absolutely. So the tetrasod is really for, let's say, two populations. Number one, yes, you have suddenly, or a loved one has had to make health their number one priority. You went to the doctor and you had an unnerving conversation, and you left and you're like, okay, everything stops. You know, your health is number one. That is tetrasod, because tetrasod is 95% Gatatana, and it is 5% tetrasod. So tetrasod is that antioxidant power punch of sodium oxide dismutase. That phytoplankton, it's Tetracellus chewy is the name. It's like tetrasod, but it's tetra. The sod stands for superoxide dismutase, the most powerful antioxidant on the planet. So if you're in a battle with your health, you want to take the tetrasod. You could take 1 to 10 scoops a day, honestly. The other population is you work out, you exercise, and you don't even have to go to the gym. I mean, but you walk, you lift weights, you play pickleball, golf, tennis, basketball. You're out, you're walking with your friends, you're working out. Maybe you do go to the gym, maybe you lift weights. You are an amateur athlete, or maybe there's college athletes or even pro athletes in your family, but you work out or you golf or play pickleball. You need the tetrasod before and after your workout. So all you do is you take a scoop of the tetrasod, maybe, you know, half hour, an hour before you go play golf or pickleball or go to the gym or walk. And then you take a scoop when you get back in the house. And that helps. There's studies with the muscle recovery. So it's a workout recovery product as well. And it gets right in your cells because it's microscopic. But remember, the tetrasod does have 95% of that is the Gatatana. So you're getting the nutrition, you're getting the prebiotics, but you are getting that antioxidant superoxide dismutase that helps you if you're in a health battle or if you exercise or work out.
So if I ended up in a health crisis, or if I knew someone that ended up in a health crisis, I don't give medical advice, obviously, but my opinion would be to them, I would be taking the tetrasod and I would be doing 5 scoops in the morning and 5 scoops at night. Would you agree with that?
Right. I would. And I want you all to remember something, that the thousands, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people took this in Canada for almost 14 years now. 3,000 pharmacists sold this for years, and it was Gatatana. So even with the Gatatana, people were getting jaw-dropping results because that nutrition and the prebiotics were working in the body. But Brandon, to answer your question, yes, today, because now we have the tetrasod, it's more expensive because tetrasod, quite frankly, is extraordinarily expensive. So that's the price. But do you put a price on your health? I mean, everyone that I've had that uses tetrasod 1, 4, 5, 10 scoops a day, they're like, oh my gosh, I'd pay anything, for this, because you can't put a price on your life or your health, really. But yes, we have the tetrasod now. So if you have a serious situation, absolutely, that's what you take.
Excellent. All right, go there, folks. Start out the new year. Join us. Get healthy in 2026 or get healthier, and also preventative, okay? Preventative. This is one reason why I love drinking this, because I know that it is preventative for all kinds of problems. And one of the things I definitely don't want is the big C. I also don't, I don't want prostate cancer. I don't want any of that. I'm not making claims. I'm not a doctor, but I've done my homework on this, and I don't want to end up with prostate cancer or any of that stuff. And I'm pretty confident that taking this phytoplankton is helping preventative. Am I wrong on that?
No, absolutely. You're right. We can't make any health claims. But here's the thing. Your body needs zinc. Your body needs omega-3 fatty acids. Your body needs protein. Your body needs trace minerals, vitamin E. All of that is in the Gatatana, in the tetracycline. All of it. Because
and
it's made by
feeding,
God.
You've taught me we're feeding at the deep cellular level, the mitochondria level, which then boosts your immune system to fight those free radicals that cause the bad things that I don't want to get. It fights them off. So my immune system becomes my defense system for fighting off the things I don't want to get. And then I don't have to know about it because my immune system took care of it because I boosted my immune system to do what God intended for it to do. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's why you hear like Tom Harper, first thing that happened is blood sugar regulated. He didn't have, and I mean, he was a type 1. Right. And we're not making claims, but it's not a claim about, oh, this product cures a disease. It is a statement of fact that this product is pure microscopic nutrition that gets inside your cells. And when that happens, and you're exactly right, just what you said, Brandon, when that mitochondria is working properly, then everything else in your body can balance, and it causes that good bacteria to grow and grow and grow. And when you've got more good bacteria than bad bacteria, boy, your immune system is strong. You can sleep better. Your mood is better. You have more energy, and you're going to have longevity at the end of the road with vitality because of that.
There you go. MelissaHouseGPA.com, MelissaHouseGPA.com. Dr. Lana, we're going to invite people to join us. If they haven't already been taking this, make 2026 the year you boost your immune system, get back into good health. Food is medicine, really, is what we're talking about here, I think. MelissaHouseGPA.com. As always, Dr. Lana, thank you.
God bless. Thank you all of you. See you
We'll be
again.
right back, guys, right after this break.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
All right, guys, thank you for supporting us through those two groups, Dr. Lana, Dr. Lucky. All right, I want to bring to you now, as we conclude Brandon House Live, we're just going to roll right into this. The keynote presentation that I shared just a little bit with you at the beginning of the broadcast tonight of Michael Reagan at my Worldview Weekend back in 2007. I want to bring the whole thing to you. I hope you'll tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, Truth Social, let folks know to tune in to get this. We're not going to put this online. I'm not planning to put this online right now on demand. It goes into our vault. It's part of our vault for members, where we archive 36 years of our content. But I do want to bring it here. So if you want people to see it, I know it's late, but if you want people to see it, they should tune in right now. They should tweet. So would you please tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, Truth Social, whatever you do, whatever social media you're on, let folks know. Ask them to tune in right now, worldviewtube.com, and watch this special presentation by my friend Michael Reagan, who passed away on January 4th this year, just a couple days ago. Condolences to his wife, Colleen, son Cameron, daughter Ashley, their spouses, and their grandchildren, and his grandchildren, of course. So again, I hope you'll let a lot of folks know that we're about to play this special presentation honoring my friend who did so much for me to help me be even where I am sitting right now tonight. Thank you, Michael. And we'll honor Michael with this presentation of him from 2007 at our Branson Ozarks Worldview Weekend.
Probably 5-6 years ago,
Michael Reagan called me and said, I want you to listen to my testimony. Can I send it to you on CD? I said, sure, send it on. I had been working with Michael for many years. I had never heard his testimony in totality or in his own voice. I'd read parts of it, but I've never heard it in his own voice in totality. So he sent it to me, and I sat at my desk, and I can remember that clearly, listening to this testimony of Michael Reagan. And it was so inspiring and so candid and honest and open, sharing the story of his life. And if you've not heard it, you're going to hear it tonight. So I called Michael because he wanted to know what I thought of it. After I listened to it, he said, call me. So I called him up, and I said, this is excellent. This has got to get out there. And he said, well, I think the Lord is calling me to travel and to share not just a political message, but a spiritual message. And so I sent it on to my friend Dick Bott. And he made it so that it was made available to someone by the name of Jim Dobson. And you probably heard parts of it on Focus on the Family. So I called up Michael and said, Mike, you need to write a book, a distinctively Christian book, telling your testimony. So he said, well, if you'll work with me on that, I'll do that. So we began to set out and find him a publisher, and the book, Twice Adopted, was written. In fact, Michael said, I know what I'm going to call it, even before it's written, Twice Adopted. You'll find out why tonight it's called that. And then many of you saw him at his father's funeral. Michael called me the day his dad passed away, and he said, you know, the funeral's going to be coming up. I'm going to have an opportunity to speak, and I am going to use this opportunity to share about my faith and the faith of my father. I said, Michael, the world will be watching, and I'll be praying for you. And I know countless others were praying for him, because he told me later that other friends were saying the same thing. We're praying for you, Michael, because this is a wonderful opportunity. And many of you, how many of you saw that funeral and saw Michael speak and give a strong testimony of the great gift that his father gave him, which was what? He said, the greatest gift my father gave me was, I know where he is. I know where he is. I don't have to look into to the grave and wonder. The greatest gift he gave me is, I know where my father is.
Last Saturday, when my father opened his eyes for the last time and visualized Nancy and gave her such a wonderful, wonderful gift, when he closed his eyes, that's when I realized the gift that he gave to me. The gift that he was going to be with his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
He is a syndicated columnist. You see him on Fox News Channel quite often. You perhaps hear his radio show, as we were listening to it last night, driving here from the Memphis, Tennessee area where we live. And he has been given a great opportunity. And we're so thankful that he's been willing to come all the way here to be with us tonight. And then he'll leave and meet up with his wife and son over in Omaha, Nebraska, to be with her family. So he's making a little family time out of this. And he's been very gracious to agree to give us his time tonight. So would you please join me in welcoming a true Christian statesman and my friend, Michael Reagan.
Hey, thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you. You leave the book there. Yeah, you can leave. Good evening. Good to see all of you. This is, I think, the second time I've been to Branson, Missouri. And driving in was amazing. I thought all the people I see on these signs, I thought they were no longer with us. And I find out they have actually places in Branson, Missouri where they perform. I thought for a moment there I was actually going to see a billboard with my father's name on it saying, performing tonight with Petula Clark and someone else. It's amazing. It's really good to be here and to be able to share with you and have Brandon, in fact, invite me to be here this evening and to be able to talk to you and to share with you. I might just tell you something, though, that I'm not going to embarrass anybody. I certainly hope I don't embarrass anybody here, but if anybody came tonight because they thought that I was like the dancer in the family, you're really at the wrong event. That's down the street to the left when you leave the doorway. But that's my brother Ron. I was not the dancer in the family. I never could fit into that tutu. But Ron got into it quite well. By now, I mean, most of you are pretty aware of how I got in the family, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But as Brandon was just talking about my eulogy that I gave to and for my father back 3 years ago, coming up this June 11th. And so many people come up to me, as they did tonight out front, and come up to me on a regular basis and talk to me about that eulogy. And I really think about that, and Brandon's right. Brandon was praying for me, and many of my friends were praying for me. In fact, when I got off Air Force One that day and got to our car to take us up to the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, I had 2 messages on my cell phone, and both messages were prayers from friends of mine that I go to school, not school with, but go to church with. And they were just praying that I would find the right words to say that day when I got up to the library. I knew that, and they knew that I was going to be the first one to speak that day, and so they were praying that I would find the words. And I will tell you, I was flying back on Air Force One from Washington, and I was sitting down and penning my eulogy for my father, and my daughter Ashley came up to me and she says, "Dad, what are you doing?" And I said, I'm writing a eulogy for Grandpa. She said, "Why are you doing that?" I said, "Because I think it's important. I only have a short amount of time to speak, and I want to make sure I get all the right words in." And my daughter Ashley said, "Dad, you've never written a speech. Why start now?" And she was right. Why start then? She thought I would ruin it by writing anything down. And so I didn't write the speech. I took the piece of paper, threw it in the wastepaper basket on Air Force One, and just sat and pondered, what would I say? And as we were driving out of Point Magoo and onto Las Posas Road and going up to the library, and these 2 prayers were just ringing in my ears from these friends of mine, it's like God really spoke to me and said, "You know, Michael, for a week, the world has heard about a president. Why don't you tell them about your dad?" I had never realized that because I was so in the moment that that's exactly what was going on. And then later on, as I thought through all of what had happened that week, I didn't realize till then that until I got up and spoke about my father's faith, that nobody had talked about my father's faith during that whole week. They had been so deeply involved in his presidency and what he had accomplished, but he could not have accomplished any of it without his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And that's the message that we were able to get out. Brandon's only known me for a few years. But had my father passed away before 1985, there would be a good chance that I would not have even been at his funeral. Had I been at his funeral and asked to speak, I never would have found the words. And I certainly would not have talked about his faith, or in fact my faith, at the funeral. Because I grew up very angry and very mad, and believed for the better part of my life that in fact I was going to go to hell. In fact, I was doing everything in my power to get there on my own. I wanted to prove to God that I could go to hell before he could send me there. Anybody in this room ever felt really mad at God? Anybody? Anybody ever felt that in fact God was really mad at them? Anybody ever feel in this room that in fact you were never going to go to heaven no matter what you did? That's the way I was living my life. Because of things that had happened to me when I was a child. Growing up in the Reagan household, you'd think would be wonderful. And in so many ways it was. Here I was, adopted into the family as a baby. My sister Maureen was the one that really got me into the family. She was with her parents, Ronald Reagan and Jane Wyman, at Schwab's Pharmacy on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood back in 1944. Maureen was 3 years of age. And all of her friends had brothers, and they were all older brothers. And so while they were there at Schwab's Pharmacy, Maureen went up to the pharmacist. And she had 97 cents in her little purse, and she dumped it out on the pharmacist's desk. And the pharmacist said, "What do you want, little girl?" And Maureen said, "I want a brother." Now that was 1944. there was nothing the pharmacist could do. If it had been 2007, no telling what he might have been doing. But what did happen is it got her parents, Ronald Reagan and Jane Wyman, seriously considering bringing another child into the house. They had discussed it and talked about it. But Maureen had been such a tough childbirth that, in fact, they thought it would be a good idea not for Jane to ever become pregnant again. And if they were going to bring a child into the house, it'd be a good idea to adopt that child into the home. And they had thought about it and not thought about it again until that day with Maureen. And so they began the process of beginning to look to adopt a child. While that was going on, there was a young girl by the name of Irene Flower. She was a young girl. She was the 10th in a family of 10. She was the change of life child. She lived in Portsmouth, Ohio, and she fell in love with the lifeguard at the local pool. The problem was the lifeguard, John Bergholzer, was married. She became pregnant by John. And John did what I guess a lot of men did in those days when they got a young girl pregnant they weren't married to. John decided to join the military. So he took off for Arizona to go to boot camp, but Irene followed him to Arizona. And while at boot camp, one night coming back onto base, John was out of uniform, his hat was off. The MP told him to put his hat back on correctly before he could come on base, and John decided it would be a better idea to deck the MP. So he decked the MP. They threw him in the brig, and they felt that if he wanted to fight, there was a war going on in France, and it'd be a good idea to send him there. So the next day they would send him to St. Louis. The day after that, they would send him to France, and they would never see each other again. And there would be a couple of letters they would exchange, but that would be it. But before John left to go to war, he had $600 in his pocket. He grabbed $400 of it, gave it to Irene and said, you go to California and you have that baby of yours. So she went to California, and she did what so many young people do when they come to California. They all want to be in the business. And so she got in the acting business, did bit parts, began to ask questions if there was anybody in Hollywood that might, in fact, be looking to adopt a child. And she heard about Jane Wyman. Now, Jane Wyman and Ronald Reagan were the big to-do of the day. You ever see pictures of my mom back in those days? I guess in this vernacular today, we would refer to her as a hottie. For the young people, what I try to do is explain to people that Ronald Reagan and Jane Wyman were considered the, I guess for all intents and purposes, the Ben and J-Lo of the day. The difference was they could act. Yeah. So she found out Jane Wyman was looking. So she called Jane on the phone, and Jane told her that, in fact, if she were to give birth to a boy, to give her a call, she would come down to the hospital. So on March 18, 1945, after 55 hours of labor, you would have given me away too, huh? Every woman in here was thinking, I would have given you up. I know that sound. That was a groan. That's what that was. Yeah. She calls Jane. Jane came down to the hospital because Irene wanted to put me into the arms of the woman who was going to be my mother. A week later, I would go home from the hospital. It was a big to-do in Beverly Hills. Everybody came out. Daily Variety, Hollywood Reporter, the local papers. Everybody was there to witness this day that this young man was going to be coming into the Reagan household. So as I was brought in through the front door, my sister Maureen got so excited, she ran upstairs, got her piggy bank, and tried to get the cork out from the bottom of the piggy bank and couldn't do it. She had sweaty palms. So she took the piggy bank, threw it on the floor, and broke it. Grabbed 97 cents off the floor and ran downstairs and gave it to the nurse as the nurse was leaving, and thanked the nurse for bringing her home a brother. That's how I got in the Reagan family. Now, Maureen and I, over the years, to be honest with you, we were no different. Our family was no different than yours. There were many times she asked for her money back. There were many times I offered to give her money back with interest. But we were just a typical, brother, sister of any family, except we were brother, sister in Beverly Hills. You know, for the longest period of time, I didn't know my parents actually worked for a living. I thought acting was fun. I thought really for a long period of time, they owned a department store in Beverly Hills. We had monogram towels, MER, Michael Edward Reagan in blue. There was MER, Maureen Elizabeth Reagan in pink. Back in the 1940s and 50s, that's how you could tell the boy towels from the girl towels. Today, interchangeable. But back then, that's how the boy towels and the girl towels got split up between the bathrooms in the house. Nobody knows their mother's name. My mother's name was just Mom. But the initials on her towels matched the department store we shopped at in Beverly Hills. And so when we went there, they treated us like we owned the place. I thought we did. And I thought that, in fact, I would grow up to manage this department store. And that's where all the money was coming from to live in the mansion we lived in Beverly Hills. So I was disappointed to find out that they were actors. And as Maureen and I would try and get into the acting business, and we would keep asking them because we wanted what they had, they kept on saying it was a terrible business. You wouldn't want to be in it. It's a tough business. We finally figured out, Maureen and I did, that the reason they didn't want us in it was because they didn't want the competition. And you would think growing up in that kind of a life is a wonderful thing, and in so many ways it is. It is. But back in those days, the parents who were working in that business did not have time to spend with their children. They were on location, they were at the set, 5 o'clock call in the morning. And so instead of being home with us, we would be sent to boarding school. My parents divorced when I was 3 years of age. And I was no different than so many kids who go through divorce. I wasn't sure that I wasn't to blame in some way. I didn't know how to treat Nancy. I was fearful if I treated Nancy nicely, my mother would be upset with me. If I treated my mother well, Nancy would be upset with me. And I didn't know where Dad fit in the picture on any or all of it. So I was very confused at 3 years of age. I write in my book, Twice Adopted, that divorce is when two people walk into their child's room and take everything in it and break it and walk out and expect the child to put it back together. We don't put it back together very well at all. Look what's going on today with Basinger and Baldwin and their child. Everything in that child's life is being broken, and they're expecting the child to put it back together. We don't put it back together, but somehow people believe that we'll be able to do just fine. Some do. Many, in fact, never do. Never, in fact, do. So here is my mother raising children. She's a single parent. And so boarding school became the option for her. She thought that would be a good place to put us. Now, it probably was. But for a young child, it wasn't that nice at all. My sister would go to boarding school before I would because she was 4 years older than I was. And when she was at school, I would learn things about our family that maybe Maureen didn't know. And I felt that if I somehow shared those things with my sister, that in fact it would bond me with her even closer. Her birthday was January 4th, Christmas, of course, being 25th of December. And so I became privy to what she was going to be getting for her birthday one year. And so when she came home for the Christmas break, I was there talking to her in her room. She was combing her blonde hair into her full-length mirror. And I said to Maureen, I said, Merm, I know what you're getting for your birthday. And she says, Michael, I don't want to know. And I said, but I know what you're getting for your birthday. I really want to tell you. She says, I really don't want to know what I'm getting for my birthday. I want it to be a surprise, but I know what you're getting. And Maureen said, if you tell me a secret, I'm going to tell you a secret. And so I said to Maureen, you're getting a blue dress for your birthday. And Maureen turned and said, and you were adopted. Now, she thought that was fair. We didn't know what it meant. So we thought we'd go down and ask my mom. And we asked my mom, Mom, Maureen said I'm adopted. Anybody ever see Falcon Crest with my mother? Anybody remember the look she used to give Lorenzo Lamas in that show? that wasn't acting. That was the same look we got that night. And we said, we better not go here anymore and talk about that. But just enough, she told me I was chosen, that I was lucky. And we kind of left it there. The next year, I would be off to boarding school at Chadwick. Now, what was interesting was that we would be there, and all the kids would tell us how lucky we were. We live in a kind of society today where we look at people who have money, fame, fortune, and we think they're lucky because they have fame and fortune. We put everything at a material level. It was no different when I was 6 years old, 7 years old, going to boarding school. Because the kids would tell me how lucky I was because my parents were rich and famous. My mother had her own television show in the 1950s. My dad was doing fine, doing GE theater and other things. So because they were on TV or in the motion pictures, my mother had won an Academy Award for Best Actress, nominated 4 other times. They felt that I was luckier than they were. So here I was with the Hopes and the Crosbys and the Crawfords, all of us lucky kids who would every day watch children get picked up by their parents and taken home at night to have dinner with them. And they thought we were the lucky ones. And if you could stand outside our dorm at Chadwick School on Palos Verdes Peninsula and listen to us at night, you would hear all of us crying ourselves to sleep and beginning to wonder if in fact we were even loved. Because nobody was nurturing us. And we wanted to be loved. So many books have come out of that era from those that I went to school with and grew up with. Angry books of people not loving their parents. Because nobody ever held them. Nobody ever loved them. Because we were thinking as children, not as adults. Today I look back and understand it. But as a 6, 7, 8-year-old, I didn't understand it at all. I only understood that you were going home at night and spending time with your parents, and I was not going home at night and spending any time with my parents, and I couldn't figure out why. Why? Today we send kids to day school. We send them to someplace else for other people to take care of them. We drop them off at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, pick them up at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, and we don't think the kids might be wondering, why am I dropped off first and picked up last? See, we children think as children. We do not think as adults. And I was thinking as a child. And it was hurtful to me. But I so loved getting together with my dad. My mom would take us to school on Sunday night, and my dad would normally pick us up on Friday. And Saturday morning, he would come by the house and take us out to the ranch. And I would sit on that curb at 333 South Beverly Glen and wait for my dad to come around the corner from Sunset Boulevard and pick me up, and we'd go out to the ranch. And Dad was great. Dad made sure with all the games we played in the car that nobody ever lost. Somehow it always ended up a tie. He would always take the side of the underdog just before we got back to the house in the late afternoon to make sure it was a tie. If you wanted to spend time with Dad, you had to do some things. Learn how to swim. Learn how to ride a horse. Later on, if you knew how to chop firewood, you could spend days with him. With my dad. My dad, and maybe you know somebody like this. Do you know anybody, like if you ask them what time it is, they tell you how the watch was made? You know what I mean? Brandon's like that. My dad's like that. You say, Dad, what time it is? Well, back in 1902. And you go, Dad, I just want to know what time it is. Let me tell you how the watch was made. I remember, gosh, I think it was like 8 or 9, and I guess it's because my dad and my mom, both from the Midwest, have this thing about, like earning your allowance instead of just getting an allowance. And the Hopes and the Crosbys and Crawfords were getting a little bit more than I was getting. I was getting $1 a week. And I thought that was pretty cheap of the Reagans. And so I actually asked my dad on the way out to the ranch, I said, Dad, what's the chance of getting a bigger allowance? I need to keep up with the Hopes. And my dad, instead of saying yes or no, for the next 45 minutes, I heard about the tax system in America. He told me how the government took 90 cents out of every dollar. That he was only left 10 cents. With that 10 cents, he had to take care of his first wife, Jane, myself, my sister, Maureen, his new wife, Nancy, his new daughter, Patty, and the horses, the cows, the ranch, and the foreman. And by the time we got to the ranch, I felt so sorry for this man, I actually offered him back half my allowance. And he made me a promise, though. He said, if there's ever a president elected who gives me a tax break, I will give you an increase in allowance. So I found myself at a young age becoming political. Not Democrat or Republican, conservative or liberal, just caring about, is my dad going to get a tax break here? And my dad finally got one from John F. Kennedy, 1960. And my dad, true to form, increased my allowance from $1 to $5. I was now in high school. It seemed like about $1 a week. My mother was a little bit different. My mother was really the taskmaster in the family, if you will. Dad was a pushover. Dad was really, really easy. If you were in trouble, you wanted to go to Dad, unless you were a Russian. But if you were a kid, it was okay. You wanted to go to him. You did not want to go to Mom. Mom was the one that held you accountable, really accountable. See, Dad talked in what we call parables. He would tell you a story and then he would hope you would get it. Mom talked with a riding crop. And you got it real quick. I don't know if it happens in your family, but in our family in Beverly Hills, we tried to make our parents feel guilty. That if you buy me something, I'll love you. I'll be good. I don't know if your kids ever tried to make deals with you, but we were always trying to make deals with our parents. And I remember going to my mom, and 10-speed bikes had just come out. And so I had found one for me, a blue one. And I went to my mom. I said, Mom, I found this bike, Hensort Sakuri, 10-speed, and will you buy it for me? And my mom said, how badly do you want it? I said, I want it more than anything. And she said, do you want it bad enough to get a job? And I said, Mom, I'm 10. And she said, you know what you can do with a bike? And I said, no, what can I do with a bike? She said, you could get a paper route. And I said, but I'm 10. And so at 10 years of age, I actually signed a note owing my mother for the bike she was now going to loan me the money for. And I got a job on Sunday morning selling papers in front of Good Shepherd Church in Beverly Hills. And from the profits I made, I would pay her back a percentage of the profits, and ultimately I would pay off that bike. But I said to her, I said, why are you making me buy a bike when all of my friends are getting them given to them by their parents? And she said, because I build men, I don't build boys. And I said, what do you mean by that? She says, I have more money than I'll ever need. If I give it to you and buy you things and don't make you work for it, you'll be a 40-year-old child. I want you to be a man. And I thought to myself, okay. So I went into debt to my mother. Now, my mom, who just turned 90 in January, we still have that conversation. I've now gone to her and said, Mom, we've done it your way now for about 50 years. It's time to let go of some of the money. And she's still building men, not boys. She hasn't changed that much at all. And I have a great, great, great relationship with her. And I'm able to do that because my life, in fact, changed, where I can look back and laugh at the things that happened to me in my life and kind of have a chuckle with God. But here I was at this boarding school, and I came out of the boarding school, and my mom put me into a day school. I was 8 years of age and going into the third grade, and my mom, again, doing what she thought was the right thing. She put me into an after-school program where a man by the name of Don would come pick us up and take us out to the park. And, at this park, I learned how to throw a football, learned how to throw a baseball, learned how to do sport kinds of things. And I felt that I needed that because the Reagan household, my dad was so revered, I thought the more athletic I am and the better I am, the more I'll earn my way into the family. See, I felt that way because what had happened at school is when I told some kids at school that I was adopted, instead of them saying, "You're lucky, you're chosen," instead said, "You're illegitimate and you're a bastard." See, kids do that. We adults don't think kids do that, but that's what kids do. I was at an event just last night over in Colorado Springs, and I was talking to a young man who has 2 adopted children, and I was telling him about this, and he said, "My gosh," he said, "I send my kids to a Christian school, and they're adopted, and they're being teased about being adopted, as if they aren't real. Kids haven't changed from the 1940s and 50s to the year 2000. Kids are ruthless, and we parents sometimes don't understand that, but they truly, truly are. And it can be very, very hurtful, as it was to me. Because I started to internalize that maybe that was the reason that my birth mother gave me up for adoption, was the fact that I was illegitimate. And my goodness, I can't share that with Jane or my father, because if I share it with them, maybe they don't know. And if I share it with them, maybe they're going to give me up too. So I kept it quiet and kept that secret inside of me. One day at the house, I decided I would do what my mother does. I would sit down in her library and look at this big book she called, I think, a Bible. And so I was in her library, and I started flipping pages of the Bible, and I don't know what I was looking for. I think I was looking for illegitimate or bastard, because I felt, my mom always said the Bible had all the answers. And so I thought maybe the answers would be there. It let me have a better communication, maybe talking to my mom about this. And so I'm looking through the Bible, and it takes me to Deuteronomy 23:2. And I read it, and Deuteronomy 23:2 says, "All illegitimate children and their children in the 10th generation will never enter the kingdom of heaven." Now, don't come after me later and say, "But Michael, I was 7 years old, did not know New Testament, Old Testament, it was the Bible." But I read that, and I closed the Bible. The next time I would open the Bible would be 1978. And I was then sure that was the reason Irene gave me up. And I knew then I couldn't share it with my mom nor my dad. I could not allow them to know what now I knew about me that they didn't know. So that's why it was important for me to, in fact, try to earn my way into the family in so many other ways. Through football, through baseball, through sports. That if I was really good in those areas, that somehow that would overshadow what I knew about me that they didn't know about me. The problem was that that's right when people like Don move into a child's life. What my mother didn't know, what my father didn't know, certainly what I didn't know, because I didn't even know the words back then, was Don was a pedophile. That Don had worked his way into the system to be around children, looking for children who wanted to be embraced, looking for children that needed affirmation. Every child needs affirmation. If we do not affirm our own children, somebody will. And if it's not us, can you trust that other somebody? I began to be affirmed by Don. You're great. You're wonderful. Everything you're doing is the best it'll ever be. You're the best football player. You're the best baseball player. The accuracy on your football throws are great. The accuracy on your baseball throws are even better. We had a yo-yo contest. And guess what? Nobody won, but I took second. But Don knew second place wasn't good enough for the Reagans. I knew that too. So Don instead traded me second place for the first place Duncan yo-yo patch. Red, black, and gold. And I went home, I was so proud of it. So proud of it. Don used that day against me later on, because he began the process of dropping all the other children off and taking me, and for the remainder of the school year, every week would sexually abuse me. Now, I didn't know what sexual abuse was. I didn't know. Inherently, I knew there was something wrong, but I couldn't tell you what it was. I wasn't sure, is this what men do? Is this what adults do? Is this what you're supposed to do? But I was fearful, but I didn't know what to say. I didn't know where to turn. And I felt at the same time guilty that I've done something terrible, but the word abuse was not in my language. Sexual molestation is a word I'd never heard of in my life. Pedophile is something I learned as an adult. But I was scared. And he would do this every week. Then, one week, he came by the house and he said to my mom, taking the kids up to Santa Monica Mountains for a picnic today. Can Michael go? And Mom said, sure. And out the door I went. We went all up to the mountains. And that day, up in the mountains, Santa Monica Mountains, he sent the kids on a trail to one side of the mountain, and he took me on a private trail to another side of the mountains and took me over to some areas that had caves in Santa Monica Mountains. And he took out a camera, and he had me take my clothes off, and he took photographs of me, naked. We hear so much today, what's killing America? Pornography. It's all over. There was a story the other day in the paper that in Saudi Arabia, the #1 photographs that are sent cell to cell from the young people today in Saudi Arabia, 90% pornography. We hear people talk about child pornography. I was the child who was child pornography. Because 3 days later, Don would tell my mother he's going to take me to dinner after camp, and he takes me back to his apartment, and he brings me into his apartment, and it's got a green haze to it. He takes me over to a part of it, and he has these pans. He has a clothesline. What I now know are many other negatives, probably from other children, but I didn't know that then. It was a curtain to me. And he took a piece of paper and he put it in a pair of tongs, or a set of tongs, and he moved the paper from the first to the second pan to the third pan. And what came up in the third pan was a photograph of the Santa Monica Mountains. As an almost 9-year-old child, I am in awe. It is magic to me. I've never seen anything like that in my life. And it was magical. And so he said, Michael, would you like to do one of these? I said, yes. And he took the tongs, put it in my right hand, put the paper in the tongs, and moved my arm from the first pan to the second pan to the third pan. And what came up in the third pan was a nude photo he had taken of me just a few days earlier. He had tricked me. Put his hand on my right shoulder. He said, wouldn't your mother like to have a copy of this? And I literally went into shock. Because then all of a sudden I understood that the most terrible thing in the world just happened to me. And there was no way I could allow my mother to in fact see this. I knew at that point in time, if I wasn't going to hell before, I was hell-bent to get there now. And my whole life changed. I became an angry boy. My schooling went downhill. My mother never knew why. And I would never share it with her. In fact, I was so out of control, but I was trying to control parts of my life. And one of the determinations I made was this. I needed to get away from my mother. I needed to protect my mother from me because I was evil. And so I would call my mother names. I would say things to her, and she couldn't deal with it, so she felt the best thing she could do was put me into another boarding school. And this time, we kids talk about this. She put me into a school we referred to as St. John's Miniature Alcatraz. It was a military academy, but we called it a miniature Alcatraz. And it was run by, this may sound oxymoronic, it was run by the Sisters of Mercy. Yes, they were so merciful, Sister Mary Cyprian. And she had a master's degree and a credential. They were called a ruler and an eraser. And here I was in 5th grade with Sister Mary Cyprian. And I think about that too. Somebody called me on my show one day and said, if you were president of the United States, what would you do to clean up the education system in America? I said I would sign an executive order as soon as I was sworn in, and I would put a nun in every classroom in America. You know, there was 40 boys in those classes, And the only overcrowding was we had one none too many in the classroom. 12 of us probably would be diagnosed today as ADD or ADHD. Took Sister Mary Cyprian 3 weeks to knock it out of you. Yeah. You didn't dare show your ADD in her classroom, trust me. No way. And I guess she really liked me because I actually spent 2 years in 5th grade with Sister Mary Cyprian. Yeah. And my parents, I'll tell you, I look back and I say, what great parents I had, because my parents did something that a lot of parents don't do today. You know, if a child isn't prepared to go to the next grade, you know, a lot of parents, instead of supporting the teacher and the school, support the lawyers union, and they sue through lawyers to force children to go to the next grade. And then you and I, as a society, deal with them later on when they can't read, can't write, or do anything else in life or get a job. My parents did something different. They actually supported the school and the principal and said if he's not prepared to go back to 6th grade or go in with the other class, keep him in 5th grade. So there I was in 5th grade. And can I tell you something? Second time through, everybody loves you because you've got all the answers. I mean, it was great. It didn't hurt me at all mentally. It was really great because I could slide through at 5th grade. But it didn't work out that well for me either. And the grades, you know, they were doing okay, but because my parents had some fame, they were able to get me into a high school. But by that time, I had convinced my mother that, in fact, I shouldn't be living with her. And she had called my dad and got me to move in with my dad. I thought it'd be different living with my dad because my dad certainly wouldn't put me in an all-boys school. See, that was one of the problems, too. You see, having been sexually molested for a year of my life and having those photographs out there, I was now living with the knowledge that all that was there, and it was only me and Don that knew about it. And I kept on remembering, wouldn't your mother like to have a copy? And I feared about my sexuality. What would people think if they knew? My mother had us all baptized December 8th, 1953. But there was no way I was going to share with the priest what had happened because I knew the priest would talk to my mother. And I didn't need my mother knowing what had happened because if she didn't throw me out because I was illegitimate, she would certainly throw me out because of this situation. And if my dad found out, he would probably agree with my mom, send him back to an orphanage or get rid of him. He was no good to begin with. And I was dealing with all of these things. And here I was in an all-boys school dealing with the fact, am I homosexual? Am I heterosexual? When am I? I became a bedwetter. I wet the bed probably every single night in Dorm C at St. John's. And I would be teased for that, but I found a way around it. You see, I found out that if I became an altar boy and took the 6 o'clock Mass that nobody wanted to serve Mass, that in fact I could get up at 5, change my sheets, go serve Mass at 6, and I started to do that, and all of a sudden I'm a hero on campus and a hero to my mother because I'm the altar boy at 6 o'clock for Mass, but nobody knows that what I'm only doing is doing that to change my sheets because I've wet the bed. So moving with my dad I thought would be better, but my dad decided, hey, I'm going to follow your mother's lead. I'm going to put you in the school she chose for you. So I went from the Sisters of Mercy to the Jesuits. God was having fun. We'll get you. And so here I am at Loyola High School, and it really wasn't that much different at Loyola High School, except now I was a high school student, I was living with Dad, and coming home to Dad and Nancy, and treating them basically the same way I was treating my mother. Because I just had a fear that in fact that they found out they would kick me out, so it was better for me to force them to want to get rid of me. My dad, what a dad. My dad felt sorry for me because he had me in all boarding school with all boys. And so my dad, during the week, would actually get on the phone and call his friends who had daughters and tell them, you know, Michael's at an all-boys school, doesn't have time to ask anybody out on Friday or Saturday night. is your daughter available? And I would come home on a weekend, and more often than not, this one time he said, hey, you're going to the prom, Marlboro prom with Connie Freiberg on Saturday night, junior, senior prom. I said, really? And I knew who Connie was. I hadn't seen her in years. And I said, why do you say that? She said, well, I talked to her parents this week, and she didn't have a date for Saturday night. And so I volunteered you, and the tuxedo's in the closet, and you'll be picking her up at 7 o'clock and taking her to the prom. I said, so let me get this straight. We're now in like May. You called the family. This is in stone in September when school starts, when the junior senior prom is. And Tuesday of this week, she still didn't have a date. So my dad and I would have these heart to heart, like, why do you think she didn't have a date, Dad? Can we talk about that? And so my dad and I would have a heart to heart with that. And so, you know, needless to say, loyalty didn't work out that well for me either. And my dad, trying to be nice, said, what can we do? And I said, send me out of state to a coeducational school to where I get my own dates on Saturday night. And he did that. And I ended up at the school in Arizona, Judson School. And I graduated from there in 1964. I was 1963 football player of the year in Arizona. I was recruited by Arizona State and got home for Christmas, and my dad said, you know some guy named Frank Cush? I said, yes, he's the football coach at Arizona State. He said, well, he called. I said, what did he call about? Well, he wanted to talk to me about a scholarship for you to Arizona State next year. I said, really? What did you tell him? He said, I told him to give that scholarship to some young man who really needs it, that I'd be paying for your education. I said, excuse me? He said, I told him to give it to somebody else. I said, you told him to give my scholarship to somebody else? He said, yes. So really, I feel the world's lucky my dad lived to be president of the United States, because I almost strangled him that day. Almost strangled him that day. But you know something? I went to Arizona State, didn't play football, dropped out of college. I really had no gumption to be that big of a success, because one of the problems I had is those photographs. See, the other problem, not only dealing with am I heterosexual, homosexual, by now I had burned off so many of my friends. I felt that if my friends knew what happened to me, they would leave me. So as I look back, until a few years ago, I had no relationship at all with any friends from that era. I'm now putting those things all back together. But from that era, I would burn my friends off because I knew they would leave me if they knew about me. I was so worried about my sexuality, what people would think, that I tried to prove to myself on weekends that, in fact, I was heterosexual. I would steal money from my dad's wallet or my mother's purse or Nancy's purse, whichever one was closest to me when they weren't looking. And I would take the money and I would go to downtown Los Angeles when I was at Loyola High School. And I would buy prostitutes on Saturday night. And I would buy these prostitutes simply to try and prove to myself that I was indeed heterosexual. And I almost prayed to be caught, because I'd rather be caught in that situation with a prostitute than anybody know what had happened to me when I was 8. So I'm dealing with all this. I go to Arizona State and I leave, and my mom says to my dad, don't let him move in with us. So my mom called my dad. I couldn't live with my mom, couldn't live with my dad. Time to get a job, go to work. And I went to work on a trucking dock in Los Angeles loading oil well freight. And here I was when my dad decided to run for governor. And I thought I could hide in his governorship if he won. I voted for my dad because I was hoping to get a job. Hoping to hide in Sacramento. And so the night he won, I congratulated my dad. I said, thank you, Dad. Congratulations, Dad, on winning. And my dad said, thank you, Michael. And I said, what are the chances of getting a job in Sacramento? And my dad looked at me, and I found out something about him that night I never knew. He did not believe in nepotism. And I thought to myself as I left the Ambassador Hotel, I should have been adopted by the Kennedys. They do believe in nepotism. My life would change in 1973. You see, God always, I guess, was working when I wasn't. In 1973, I met a young girl from Nebraska. I'll be with her tonight. Blind date. Her name was Colleen. Christian girl. You ever prayed for somebody and you didn't know why? She prayed for me and never knew why. She might have been praying for herself, because I was not easy to get along with. I was dating about 9 girls when I met her on this blind date. We would be married 2 years later. 12 days after we got married, Dad announced he was running for the presidency. And I thought, now I could hide in that relationship. If Dad wins the presidency, people will maybe forgive me for what I am. But I also worried that if they found out about me before they voted, that in fact the Christian community may not support my dad and blame him for what happened to me. I wasn't sure. In 1978, my dad had lost in 76, but in 78, we had our son Cameron. And my wife Colleen said, it's now time to go to church. And that's when I reopened the Bible. But I only opened it. I didn't mean it. I had learned pretty well how to act. How to act like people thought I should act because of who I was. And so I'd open the Bible and I would go to church. In 1980, my dad would run and win the presidency of the United States of America. And I thought that might help alleviate what I was going through and the pain, but it still didn't. But here it was, 1980, I still had not shared with my wife. And the reason I had not shared with my wife or anybody else, I always feared that they would walk away from me. And I feared that more than anything. As we went through the 80s, we got to 1983, and my son Cameron was now 5, and then he was 6. And then in 84, he was like getting older. In 85, when he turned 7, he is now the age I was almost when I began to become a molested child. And I began to do what so many children do, or so many adults do, who have been molested. I began to browbeat my child. I would push him down to build myself up. I would verbally abuse him because it made me feel better about myself, that I was better than he was. And that's when Colleen walked into the room one night, or one day, when I was browbeating him for something. And Colleen said, Michael, I'm so tired of you blaming God for everything that's going on in your life, as though it's his fault. Did you ever think it's your fault? I'm tired of you cussing God. I'm tired of you giving the finger to God. I'm tired of the way you're treating our son. It's time you get down on your knees and for the first time in your life, ask God for forgiveness and ask Jesus to come into your life. I was in the bedroom of my house, and it's the first time in my life I got down on my knees and prayed for Jesus to enter my life and to God to take it over because I was doing a lousy job. We would be baptized on Father's Day of 1985. My wife, already a Christian, but wanted to be baptized with me. But I still had not shared with her about what had happened to me when I was a young man. What caused the anger? What caused the fist through walls? Or when the car wouldn't work, tearing the steering wheel out of the car. I didn't tell her about the bicycle that my mother had loaned me the money for, that when the chain came off, I blamed God, blamed my molester, and knew that everybody hated me, and took a ball-peen hammer and destroyed the bicycle, lifted it up over my head, and threw it in the bay in Newport Beach, where we were living at the time. I hadn't shared with her that when the battery went dead in the 1965 Cutlass Supreme out at the ranch, I blamed God for that, and knew that God hated me and even the car hated me. And I took a sledgehammer from the barn, and it took me 30 minutes to destroy a 1965 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme. You would not have recognized it. Both times I blamed vandalism to my mother on the bike and to my father on the car. It was that kind of anger. I was killing material things, killing things around me with sledgehammers or ball-peen hammers, whatever was close. And even though I was a Christian, I was worried that I still couldn't share things with God that maybe I needed to share with him, but I was still fearful. I'd love to say I was one of those Christians that, boy, I accepted Christ and my life changed, the world came, it just changed for me. The sun shone and wow, wasn't that way. I had so much baggage. I have lived and lived as a victim for so long, I was comfortable in my victimhood. Even though I was a Christian, I was still comfortable there. I was still making deals with God. In 1987, I was offered a pile of money to write a book about my mom and my dad and blame them for everything that had happened in my life. And you know, it sounded pretty good. I could hide behind $2 million. And here I was, ready to write this book, a tell-all book blaming my parents for everything. And God spoke to me, and I think he probably spoke to me before, but this was the first time I listened. And God said, Michael, you can't do it. It would be a lie. And he was right, because my parents never knew what made me angry. They never knew what made me what I was. And it wasn't them, but I was blaming them and blaming God. I was allowing Don to control my life, not God, not my parents. As long as Don was controlling my life, I was an angry kid. So I wrote the book, but it's the first time I dealt with the sexual molestation. I had to tell my wife. Hardest day of my life was telling my wife what had happened to me. And I sat on the couch at the house, and I said to Colleen what had happened to me as a child. And she didn't get up and run away. She embraced me, and she hugged me, and she loved me. But then I had to tell my dad and Nancy. And so here I was at the ranch. It was the occasion of my daughter Ashley's 4th birthday. We're at the ranch, Rancho del Cielo. When I used to ride out to the ranch with Dad as a young boy before Patty was born, I would sit on Nancy's lap. This was before seatbelt laws. And Nancy, anybody ever have you just scratching between the shoulder blades? Does that not just feel wonderful? I can remember that today, how that felt. And when she became pregnant with Patty, couldn't do that anymore, so I was relegated to the back seat. But here I was at the ranch, April 12th, 1987. I'm looking at my dad, at his belt buckle and his boots. Nancy's on my left. She's got her right hand on my shoulders, and she begins to scratch between the shoulder blades like she did when I was 6, when things were good, and there was no Don. It was just a family. And it took me back, that 6-year-old child, and I began to tell my father what had happened. And I was literally, I don't know if you ever saw Linda Blair in The Exorcist, but she looked like Mother Teresa, how I looked that day. Because there wasn't a pore in my face that something wasn't coming out of. As it was spewing from my mouth, and I was puking literally on my father's boots. I was looking at his belt buckle and thinking, if he looks at his boots, he's really going to be mad. So I was hoping he wouldn't look down. And I finally got done, and I stopped. And my dad goes, well, where is he? I'll kick his butt. But he didn't run away. He wanted to kick the guy's butt. And I left that day. And I think I got a little closer to God because I started to feel a little bit more secure. But I was still making deals with God. I was still having trouble dealing with it because I worried about people at church, what they would think. I was going to church now, but as much as I was trying to learn about God, I was sitting in church next to people who never asked about me. They always asked about my dad. They asked about my stepmother, Nancy, but they never asked about me. So often we go to church, we sit next to people, and we just assume they're Christian because they're sitting in church. They may be in a lot of pain, and they just want somebody to hug them and love them. But sometimes we Christians forget to do that. We don't ask the questions, and nobody asked the question to me, how's your dad? How's Nancy? Nobody ever said, how's Michael? And so I would make deals with God, and I ultimately changed churches and went to Church on the Way with Pastor Jack Hayford, who began to mentor me because I needed a lot of mentoring at that time. And one night he was talking to the men at church, and he was telling us about David and Goliath. And here he was talking about David and Goliath, and he passed out to all the men washed stones. Like this. And he said, take that stone. Every day men meet their Goliaths. In the workplace, at home, where they might be. Every day we do face our Goliaths. He said, as David slew his Goliaths, keep the stone in your pocket. And when you come upon those Goliaths in your life, pornography, whatever it might be, reach in your pocket, grab the stone of David, and get through the rest of the day. And Brandon knows I carry a stone because he asked me on occasion, and I carry it because I still have my Goliaths I deal with. I don't think I'll ever stop having those Goliaths. But I began then to understand more and get closer and closer to God. But I still was making deals. And the last deal I made with God was, now, God, if you can only get my Father to tell me He loves me, I promise to be good. I promise to live a life that you want. And you know what God said to me? When was the last time you told your dad you loved him? And I realized in all my years, this is 1991 now, I had never told my dad I loved him. But I was sitting waiting for him to tell me. And God said, Michael, the next time you see your dad, you put your arms around him, you give him a hug, and you tell him you love him. And I was doing my radio show in San Diego, California, and my dad came down to be interviewed by me on his book, An American Life. And I fulfilled, finally, a promise to God. I got up, I put my arms around my dad, and I think he was a little fearful. He looked at the Secret Service agents like, this man's attacking me. So I gave my dad this hug, and I said to my dad, Dad, I love you. You know what my dad said? Well, I love you too. And I thought to myself, you mean to tell me all I ever had to do was tell him? And I felt so stupid, absolutely stupid. But it began a relationship with my father that lasted all the way through his funeral and to this day. Because every day I hug him up here. I would see him and I would give him a hug and tell him I love him. And he would hug me back. I'd visit him at the office, give him a hug, say I love him. And in 1994, he wrote a letter to the nation, but he had Alzheimer's disease. That he was going to have to leave the world stage. But it didn't stop me from hugging him and telling him that I loved him. And there came a time, late 90s, when my dad could no longer say my name. He would speak in gibberish, or not at all. And it's those moments when you think, does he know me? Does he know who I am? Have my dad and I got everything where it needed to be for him to be in this moment? Does he know me? And Nancy would say, it's Michael. And Dad couldn't say my name, but when he saw me, even though he couldn't say my name, his arms would open up because he recognized me as the young man who would hug him. And I would fall into his arms and hug him hello and hug him goodbye. One day, Colleen and I were up visiting Nancy because that's what you did. You didn't visit Dad anymore. You were there for Nancy, and you kind of were there with Dad because he could not communicate. This is late 1990s, maybe 2000, 2001. And here I was, Alzheimer's free, and I had gotten up because I had something on my mind, something else on my mind. And I had forgotten to hug my dad goodbye. And I got to the car, and Colleen said to me, Michael, you forgot something. I said, what'd I forget? She said, look at the door. And I turned around and I looked at the door of the house. My dad, deep into Alzheimer's, couldn't say my name, had remembered that I had forgotten to hug him goodbye, and gotten up in the den and taken his little baby steps all the way to the front door of the house. And he was standing in the doorway of the house with his arms wide open, waiting for me to come back. And I ran back. I put my arms around my dad and said, Dad, I love you, and gave him a hug. Had I not had a woman come into my life in 1973, a Christian woman, and pray for me, if I hadn't had friends pray for me when I didn't know that they were praying for me, had I not finally dealt with my demon of sexual abuse and child pornography, of being the photograph, and allowing God to take over my life, and understand that we're all adopted children in God's family. Had those things not happened to me, had I not been mentored by people like Pastor Jack Hayford, I would not have been able to give the eulogy I gave from my father on June 11th of 2004. I think there was a reason that I was there, and God was molding me from the time I was born for that moment in history. God, Jesus stands in the doorway each and every day of our lives. How often do we turn and go back to our cars when all God or his son ever wanted was to give us a hug and just tell us that he loves us? Thank you so much. Thank you. Good evening. I'm Mike Reagan. You knew my father as governor, as president, but I knew him as dad. I want to tell you a little bit about my dad, a little bit about Cameron and Ashley's grandfather, because not a whole lot is ever spoken about that side of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan adopted me into his family in 1945. I was the chosen one. I was the lucky one. In all of his years, he never mentioned that I was adopted, either behind my back or in front of me. I was his son, Michael Edward Reagan. When his families grew to be two families, he didn't walk away from the one to go to the other, but he became a father to both. To Patty and then Ronnie, but always to Maureen, my sister, and myself. We looked forward to those Saturday mornings when he would pick us up, sitting on the curb on Beverly Glen as his car would turn the corner from Sunset Boulevard, and we would get in and ride to the ranch and play games, and he would always make sure it ended up a tie. We would swim and we would ride horses, or we'd just watch him cut firewood. We would be in awe of our father. As years went by and I became older and found a woman I would marry, Colleen, he sent me a letter about marriage and how important it was to be faithful to the woman you love. With a P.S., you'll never get in trouble if you say I love you at least once a day. And I'm sure he told Nancy every day, I love you, as I tell Colleen. He also sent letters to his grandchildren. He wasn't able to be the grandfather that many of you are able to be because of the job that he had. And so he would write letters. He sent one letter to Cameron, said, Cameron, some guy got $10,000 for my signature. Maybe this letter will help you pay for your college education. Then he signed it, Grandpa. P.S. Your grandpa is the 40th President of the United States, Ronald Reagan. He just signed his sign. Those are the kind of things my father did. At the early onset of Alzheimer's disease, my father and I would tell each other we loved each other and we'd give each other a hug. As the years went by and he could no longer verbalize my name, he recognized me as the man who hugged him. And so when I would walk into the house, he would be there in his chair, opening up his arms for that hug, hello, and the hug goodbye. It was a blessing truly brought on by God. We had wonderful blessings of that nature. Wonderful, wonderful blessings that my father gave to me each and every day of my life. I was so proud to have the Reagan name and to be Ronald Reagan's son. What a great honor. He gave me a lot of gifts as a child. Gave me a horse, gave me a car, gave me a lot of things. But there's a gift he gave me that I think is wonderful for every father to give every son. Last Saturday, when my father opened his eyes for the last time and visualized Nancy and gave her such a wonderful, wonderful gift. When he closed his eyes, that's when I realized the gift that he gave to me. The gift that he was going to be with his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. He had back in 1988 on a flight from Washington, D.C. to Point Mugu told me about his love of God, his love of Christ as his Savior. I didn't know then what it all meant, but I certainly know now. I can't think of a better gift for a father to give a son. And I hope to honor my father by giving my son Cameron and my daughter Ashley that very same gift he gave to me, knowing where he is this very moment, this very day, that he is in heaven. And I can only promise my father this: Dad, when I go, I will go to heaven too. And you and I and my sister Maureen that went before us, we will dance with the heavenly host of angels before the presence of God. We will do it, melanoma and Alzheimer's free. Thank you for letting me share. My father, Ronald Wilson Reagan.